4 nights. 2 battles there. It's in Vancouver, so.
Oh, it's in there. For some reason,
Yeah, it was so great. It was the mountain.
Oh, it's not plugged in, so that's
There were
probably a good sign.
planners. Sebastian went.
Or Sunday and Monday, I guess.
Kevin was there for 2 and Jesse went. It's
Good to go? Okay, everybody, if we could, sorry for the technological, little bit of a glitch there. It just wouldn't be council if it wasn't for technology, or technology wouldn't be for council. Anyways, welcome everybody to the Tuesday, October the 24th meeting of Committee of the Whole. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, and the Sinixt people, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. Are there any late items for the open meeting? Seeing none. If I could have an adoption of the agenda as circulated. Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Payne. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that carries. And I don't know whether or not the book went around the room. I'm thinking it might not have.
No.
That's the in camera? Okay. But anyways, maybe pass that around so we can get to that when we get to the in camera. So can I have adoption of the previous minutes of the Committee of the Whole of July the 25th
So moved.
and September the 26th? Moved by Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor? And that carries. The city manager isn't available this evening. And we have a very full agenda, but if anybody has a very short council report that they feel they need to give at this time?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Pinero.
So I just had a library update and another thing, but right. So the library has hired a new assistant chief librarian, and her name is Laura Harris. So she's doing good work there. And they're.
I'm not able to hear what you're saying. I'm sorry.
And so yeah, the library has hired a new assistant chief librarian named Laura Harris, and she's doing good work there. And they are forming an ad hoc committee to develop a facility campaign, sort of in response to the news that was given to them. And opening a mini library up at Whitewater using a grant that they got from the co-op for $500. So outreach stuff that they're continuing, and these are all good things. And then also on a much more down note, yesterday I attended a rally, on Sunday, I attended a rally out front of the City Hall here in solidarity with the people of Palestine. I was invited to do that by a friend of mine, Zainab Mohammed, who just returned from Lebanon and is going through a really tough time, as is a lot of people in this community during the events that are going on there. And it was a very difficult thing to be at. There was a lot of very emotional and hard things that were said, and yet I felt that it was a good thing, and that it was important for the community, for the people in this community that are affected by that, by the events in Gaza and around there, that they have the ability to be heard and to talk to each other. There was people from both sides of that situation in attendance, and there was very difficult and I think important conversations that were had, and it felt really hard to be there and also very necessary. And so I just would urge people, as we all are aware of what's going on there, to be open to people's points of views and to reach out to people that they know that may need support right now, because there's a lot of people that are holding a lot of pain in this time. So I didn't enjoy being there, but I was glad to be there for those reasons. And my friend Zainab is a poet and a very good, an amazing artist, and she will be speaking at the Cold War Bunker. She has a show that she's presenting based on, I think it will be incorporate something to do with what's going on now, but her show was originally about her trip back to Lebanon to visit her mother, and that will be on November 2nd at 7 p.m. at the Cold War Bunker at the museum, and November 3rd at 4. And I urge everybody to go and see it and ask her questions and be exposed to her point of view about it. She's a very eloquent person. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors have a short report? Councillor Page and then Councillor Payne.
I don't know, do you want to put a timer on and you can give me the buzzer when it's short? I'm going to talk about two different things if that's okay. I did want to report in because it was timely and it happened on October 5th and 6th. Myself, Councillor Woodward, a number of staff from the City of Nelson went to the Mountain and Resort Town Planners Summit in Rossland. I felt it was an excellent event. We were really lucky that it was in Rossland. There were planners, commissioners, and city staff from Lake Tahoe in the south to Canmore and Whistler. I'm pointing as I go here, and came together in an intimate group with lots of really engaging conversation to talk about real uniqueness of communities like ours and share the interesting challenges that we're all facing as resort and mountain communities. So I just wanted to mention how engaging it was, how open everyone was for that 2-day thing. A local consultant, Mona Nadeau, actually did one of the presentations called Exploring Ethical Space for Land Use Planning in the Upper Columbia. I felt it was incredibly relevant since we're in the midst of our OCP process right now to make sure that we're using that ethical lens around land that, you know, does not belong to us, but bring that forward. I also ran into someone from Revelstoke. He's the community development coordinator who shared with me that they have created the first 5 episodes of a podcast called Revel Broke around the housing challenges that they are facing. So there were a few other things, but that's as short as I can make it. It was definitely worthwhile, the investment. I believe that, and maybe Director Arcand will have something to add, but the investment that the city made for us to attend that event, in my opinion. I said that I probably would not be making it to the next one in Colorado or California, but I would be there in spirit, and if they have a Zoom thing, I would chime right in. A wonderful group of people. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that the Nelson Committee on Homelessness and Nelson Cares is in a tentative agreement nearly there around the winter emergency beds, which as the weather gets colder is pretty significant, and they're nearly completed their application to BC Housing for the funding for that. I don't know about the rest of you, but I always feel really challenged as the temperatures drop, knowing that citizens in our community do not have a place under cover indoors to sleep. So this was really important work that they're doing, and I just wanted to make sure that if there's an opportunity for us to contribute in some way to that, that we would be open to it. Those are the 2 things. I have more, but I can wait till next time.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Page.
Just reporting out from the RDCK for the stuff that's relevant to our local context. So I think we kind of already knew this, but we did receive confirmation that we've got the $200,000 in the Green Municipal Fund for studying the GHG emission reduction pathways for a portfolio of facilities at the RDCK, specifically around our ice plant renewals that are coming up and how we might position those to be GHG reducing. Brought in a number of new staff that are backfilling different positions as things move around, including additional GIS technicians to help with the RDCK's implementation of its 911 responsibilities, because obviously there's a number of fire and rescue services within the RDCK, so its GIS system being 911 compliant for N911 is a super important pathway they're chasing there. And then other case of interest, which is a discussion as we go forward, is the area e-directors brought forward a request that was approved of the board to do a service case analysis for Whitewater's ski resorts fire service, and they're doing an evaluation now on whether that's going to be something that could be provided or if that's something that they need to self-service when it comes to dealing with their year-round facilities that are up there. Most other things are pretty area specific and don't really have a broad impact on us unless there are questions.
Councillor Woodward, do you have a question or you have a report?
I have a report.
Okay. Thank you then, Councillor Page.
Yep.
Just on a report when I went to the chamber at monthly chamber meeting, and just some highlights. They're hiring a new business and climate advisor, which will help businesses meet the challenge of climate change effects. And they're working on succession planning for the executive director of the chamber so that there is institutional continuity. And they're also working on strategic planning for the chamber board as a whole. There's a customer appreciation day on October, that's already passed, October 21st. Was customer appreciation day.
That's awesome.
And it was, it was awesome. They also had a business after business on October 19th. Usually that's once a month.
That was awesome.
That's already.
And then finally, there is a gala dinner on November 4th, which I was told it's actually sold out and 40 people are on the wait list. So very popular event. And that's my report.
And that's going to be awesome.
And that's going to be awesome. Lots of awesomeness.
Councillor Lautenberg. Okay, so I'm going to mention this only because I need to, because it's sitting right in front of me here, is that one of the things that I did attend amongst many in the last 2 weeks, which are, sometimes it's just too much to go into, as Councillor Payne acknowledges, that I did have the honor of being able to go and see the Stanley Cup that was brought to town by Bruno Campisi, who is a born and raised here athlete who has not only played and coached, but is now a scout in Las Vegas for the Knights. And so he had the opportunity, as all players and personnel of the winning team, get to take the cup anywhere that he would like to take it. And Bruno lives in West Kelowna, but he didn't even bat an eye when the thought came to him, where would he take the cup? But he brought it to Nelson because this is his home. This is where his hockey career started. Bob Hall did a wonderful write-up, so if anybody would like to hear or learn more about Bruno and his life in hockey, I would really advise that you read that. But so fortunate to be there. Bruno presented this little miniature Stanley Cup that says that the Vegas Knights won the Stanley Cup in 2023 to me and to the city, and along with some other memorabilia that is in the Sports Museum now. And it was an honor to have Bill McDonnell and his wife Anne also recognized, as Bill was very influential in Bruno's life as a minor hockey player here. They both shared the goal crease. They were both goalies in their hockey careers, so they've got a friendship that has crossed all of the years. So anyways, that's what one of the things I did on Sunday, and then I was down enjoying the fall festival at Cottonwood Park, and the leaves down there and the beauty of that park. I just can't go without saying it's fantastic, the amount of volunteer work that goes into maintaining that park and turning it into the lovely spot that we have now. And yes, the weather's changed and the rain has come, but the leaves are still pretty beautiful down there. So before the Thursday snowfall comes, perhaps if you get a chance to go down there and take a look at that fantastic asset that we have here within the city of Nelson. So quick report from me. So we're going to move on to the housing entity study. And I had, when setting up the agenda, had looked at giving an hour to this, and now I think they're going to get 45 minutes maybe. And we do have another workshop, an invited guest coming in at 5:30. So we do have to, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions from council, but we do kind of have a hard stop at 5:30 to make sure that the next guest is able to come in. And if necessary, we will invite those that need to come back to have more discussion of the housing entity, or we will put it on another agenda so council can have more time to have discussion around it afterwards. So at this point, for information, and I see that we have both Sandy McKay and Jenna Hildebrandt online to help walk this through this presentation, and we also have Andrea Wilkie from Community Futures and Tom Thompson from the Chamber of Commerce here to lead us through the discussion of the completion of phase 2 of the housing entity study. So over to you guys.
Thank you. So just to give a bit of a context before we pass it off to Jenna and Sandy, so happy to be here with Tom on behalf of the Nelson and Area Economic Development Partnership. So since 2020, housing and specifically workforce housing has been a strategic priority of the NAEDP. We know it's something that affects our employers' ability to recruit and retain staff in the region, and so that's why it's really risen to the top of the list. So this time last year, in fall 2022, we engaged Macola Development Services to conduct a study on what we've come to call the Greater Nelson Housing Entity Study. And the goal of the study was to assess the need for a local government-supported housing entity and also to explore other strategies and tools to facilitate the creation of non-market and affordable housing in the Greater Nelson area. So that's why we have Sandy McKay and Jenna Hildebrandt from Macola Development Services with us today. They're going to present the findings and the recommendations from, as you said, phase 2 of that research, and then all of us are available to answer some Q&A once they've finish their presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jenna and Sandy.
Everyone see that okay?
It's not in full screen.
There
There we go.
we go.
That's it.
Perfect. All right. Okay. Thank you, Andrea and Tom, for the introduction. I'm Jenna Hildebrandt from Macola Development Services, and as I mentioned, joined by my colleague Sandy Mackey here today to talk about the Greater Nelson Non-Market Housing Study. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge that I am joining today from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations here in Vancouver, and really grateful to be able to live, work, and learn on these lands. So as you know, we've been privileged to be working with the team, with Community Futures, the city, and RDCK for just about over a year now on this project, and we're really excited to talk about some of the phase 2 recommendations tonight. So just a bit of an overview of tonight's presentation. We're going to provide just a quick refresh on the project background and a high-level overview of the phase 2 process, but the majority of our time tonight will really be focused on the immediate and the long-term vision recommendations, and we'll conclude with a bit of a summary of some next steps that we're looking to take in phase 3 to continue the work. So I know most of you are probably familiar with this project, but it's really been about, how the city, in partnership and collaboration with the RDCK, can take a more active and invested role in the development of non-market housing in Greater Nelson. So looking at how you can take advantage of existing resources and expertise, how can we leverage municipal and regional tools and land, and ensuring that everything that we are recommending is supported by local businesses, community members, the council, and the board moving forward. So the focus of phase 2 is really to generate some educated feedback and input on the findings in phase 1 from the city, the RDCK, the NAEDP, and other relevant housing organizations and committees. We wanted to learn more about how the different groups thought that the entity should be governed, funded, and operated, for example. So we hosted visioning and education sessions in the summer with the council and RDCK board and the NAEDP. And we also had conversations with established housing entities and interviews with nonprofit housing societies as well. And the housing entities we spoke to really were chosen because of their relevance to the Greater Nelson area. And they also represented the 3 different models that we presented in phase 1, which were a corporation, a regional association, and a society model. And then most importantly, we had the opportunity again to connect with Nelson Cares and Share Nelson to really learn more about kind of what their capacity and willingness was to expand their housing portfolios. And these interviews were follow-up conversations that we've had in phase 1, as both Nelson Cares and Share Nelson have been engaged kind of throughout this project. So now kind of moving on to the heart of this conversation tonight is talking about some of the recommendations that have come out of the conversations that we've had in phase 2. So the first recommendation is kind of an immediate step recommendation, thinking about the next 1 to 2 years. This is the recommendation that we propose here is really a common kind of standard model. It's really about how non-market affordable housing is being built across the province already and in neighboring municipalities. But we're suggesting that the municipality take a bit more of an active and invested role. So with this recommendation, we're identifying that we're suggesting that the municipality identify land that is suitable for affordable housing and develop a process to equitably dispose of this land. We're also suggesting that the municipality identify and partner with nonprofit operators in Greater Nelson to respond to provincial and federal funding calls. I'll touch on some of these funding calls in the next slide within this presentation. And we're also suggesting that the municipality explore financial options to help with some of the pre-development costs of affordable housing development. This can include site surveys, planning fees, some of that preliminary schematic architectural design work. And this is kind of the piece that will require a more active commitment from the municipality. And this recommendation really kind of comes from experience and what we've been hearing from nonprofit operators, that one of the biggest hurdles of getting a project started off the ground is really this kind of initial work, this initial feasibility work. But if there is some investment from the municipality, it can really unlock great amounts of government funding from BC Housing or CMHC, for example. Just going over some of the kind of advantages and potential risks or challenges with this first recommendation. So as I mentioned, it really is common practice in municipalities across the province to dispose of land for the purpose of non-market affordable housing. Many municipalities that share kind of similar affordable housing challenges with Nelson, such as Revelstoke, for example, are beginning to play a larger role in non-market housing development by providing some of those grants for pre-development work. This immediate step recommendation will be a quicker implementation. It can be completed internally by staff at the city as well as the RDCK and with some support from a development consultant, for example. So this will allow for kind of new units to potentially come up a little bit quicker than actually standing up like a new entity. And I think one of the biggest advantages of this is you're using existing expertise in the community, right? There's already leading nonprofits that work in Nelson that have experience and capacity and who are willing to take on some more units. So I think this is a really important one to highlight, that there's already great work being done in the city by these nonprofits, and this is an opportunity to kind of bolster that and support them as they continue to build capacity. And again, it can support multiple partners. So there's, again, multiple nonprofits in the community that are doing this work, so it encourages partnerships with them, as well as it can encourage partnerships with senior levels of government as well. Some of the potential risks or challenges with this one, although it is an advantage to have multiple partners, there can potentially lead to perceived favoritism if processes are not transparent and equitable. But again, this can be easily kind of mitigated as long as both any partners are brought into the conversations early on, and that there is some criteria developed as to how the land is being disposed of. Some political implications and sustainability. So internal departments can be easily impacted by political changes. So if political priorities switch or change, a similar process might not be feasible in the future. This recommendation really takes kind of a project-to-project approach, as opposed to kind of being a sustainable entity that's kind of funded year by year. This really is much more on a project-by-project basis. And obviously with this, there's going to be cost implications. So this will require some funding from the city or the RDCK, and this funding might need to be reallocated from other service areas or departments. Also, with this recommendation, the city and or the RDCK will have less control kind of over the unit type and the final form of development, as they're not actually leading the development process. They're simply providing the land and some startup funding. And one other kind of risk or challenge with this one is that there really is a limited opportunity for regional cooperation. This is really a municipal kind of led approach. The RDCK potentially could be involved with some of the land disposal, but often this is really kind of more of a municipal municipal approach, and you are limited to how it can be collaborated with regionally. So as I noted earlier on, that there is some funding opportunities available right now, and this is kind of why we are suggesting this immediate recommendation to partner with existing nonprofits. There is right now kind of an unprecedented level of government funding that's available for affordable housing development. As I'm sure many folks know, there is a CHF funding call out right now, but there's also going to be one next year. We're expecting that in the summer or the fall of 2024. So this is a $3.3 billion investment. It provides $158,000 per unit. It also provides, some subsidies and construction financing as well. So it really does allows a project to come from the beginning all the way to construction. Additionally, there's also some CMHC money now available again for co-investment funding. This provides up to $75,000 per unit, and it really assists kind of with closing that funding gap. So it's really important kind of right now to think about that. Some of that initial startup funding that we're recommending with that pre-development funding can really help to unlock, millions of dollars from senior levels of government. So there's really an opportunity now with an investment by the city to kind of guarantee some years of affordability of some of these developments. And it also will allow kind of the asset that is built through this to remain with local values-driven nonprofits. So there is a really big opportunity right now within this next year to prepare for a CMHC funding call and seek some support as well federally through CMHC funding as well. So along with the immediate term recommendation, we have also outlined a longer term kind of 3 to 5 year recommendation. So through the engagement, we really heard that there is interest and a desire from council to solidify its commitment to non-market affordable housing through the potential creation of an external entity. So given this, we are recommending a municipal housing development corporation at this time. We know that the City of Nelson really wants to move quickly on this, which is why we are recommending a municipal approach. But we do want to note that through this process, we really have heard that there is other municipalities in the RDCK who are exploring regional or exploring housing entities. So we think that a regional entity is still definitely possible, and we'll be looking into kind of some of the funding options for both a municipal housing approach or housing corporation as well as a regional housing corporation. So right now, with the recommendation to establish a municipal housing development corporation, really the goal of this corporation would be to develop and service land, to build non-market affordable housing, looking for support from senior government funders, and partnering with existing community operators. So with this model, the corporation would really act as a land steward or a housing facilitator, and it would partner with existing operators in the community. When we spoke with folks, there was little interest expressed for something like this to take on operations. And as you've already highlighted, you're very lucky in Greater Nelson that there's operators who have a ton of experience and have the capacity and interest to expand their housing portfolios. So we would suggest at this time that they continue to be able to do that work. So we recognize that, both the immediate and the long-term recommendations will take time and they're a significant investment, but both should really be thought as, generational investments to ensure that, future generations have access to safe, secure, and affordable housing. Just want to touch on briefly some primary advantages and potential risks with this model as well. So some primary advantages is there is really a greater degree of control with this model. The land and the assets developed by the corporation will be retained by the municipality or the RDCK if we decide to go with a regional approach. There's, arm's length independence. So rather than voting to fund individual sites or projects, the corporation really is a regular annual expenditure. This mechanism, like a standardized funding mechanism, can really help kind of sustain operations. And the corporation model also kind of externalizes that day-to-day decision-making, removing it from, council or board control. And a big piece of this one is the borrowing does not impact municipal liabilities. So a municipal corporation has much more flexibility and borrowing capabilities, unlike a municipality that is subject to the municipal liabilities regulation. There's also flexibility around partnerships, so the corporation can enter into a wide range of partnerships and agreements, including, creative land swaps, private sector partnerships, or as well as land acquisition opportunities. There's much more kind of flexibility in this model. And again, there is opportunity for community expertise too. So the corporation can really kind of leverage the expertise in the community through partnerships, but also in the way that you structure its board. You can have individuals with knowledge around non-market housing, market development, real estate, tenant rights activists or advocates, operators, builders, and representatives from local First Nations. So it's really an opportunity to kind of have expertise in that board or governance model. Some potential disadvantages or risks or challenges. Setting up a development corporation will take significant and ongoing investment, and it also will likely not lead to the permitting of new units for at least kind of 3 years potentially. For example, the Tofino Housing Corporation recently completed their first build and it restarted in 2018. And many folks might have seen that the Burnaby Housing Corporation was adopted by council last week, and they're not expected to begin development work, kind of even the initial steps of development work, until early 2025. So this model will take a bit to stand up and will take a bit to figure out the business planning, the strategic planning, etc. And similar to the immediate steps, there is cost implications, of course. The creation of the development corporation will require initial as well as long-term investment to cover operation costs. And it's an organizational and operational cost burden potentially. There's really no immediate funding mechanism right now for something like this. It would have to be solely funded by the city or the RDCK, depending on if it's a municipal or regional model. And there is potentially a challenge with competition, right? So any new entity might seem, as competition, or it might garner some negative perception from folks who are currently working in the sector and nonprofit housing societies. But again, as I noted before, this can really be mitigated by just bringing in these operators early on to have some discussions and some decisions and be involved in the process of standing this up. So now we kind of talked about, are the immediate steps recommendation, our longer term recommendations. And I think phase 3 is really the focus is going to be on how can this be stood up? How can this be done? So we're going to be looking into researching best practices for a municipal and our regional land disposal strategy. And this really supports that immediate term kind of recommendation that we spoke to, as well as we'll be helping to create a pre-development work plan that will outline some activities, priorities, and expected budgets and timelines. Again, this will support kind of that immediate recommendation to partner with a nonprofit society that's already doing this work in Nelson. And step 3, or the third step in the next phase, will really be looking to figure out how a potential corporation could be stood up. So identifying potential funding mechanisms to support their implementation. So that looking at potential to use the MRDT revenues on affordable housing, as well as looking at potentially establishing a regional housing service bylaw. So we've kind of wrapped up phase 2 with these recommendations, and phase 3 will really be figuring out how to potentially action some of this work. So that's all I have for the presentation, and just looking forward to some questions and some discussion tonight for the remainder of our time together. Thank you.
Councillors. Councillor Lockenberg.
Thank you for that presentation. I think I have a few questions that maybe are really quick, like 1 or 2 word answers, hopefully, if not too long. Okay, so the first were competition concerns, and you mentioned the risks there. Are they legal or political risks? What are they? Because they don't seem to be, on the face of it, I don't see any legal risks.
Yeah, I would say that they're more kind of political risks,
Okay.
or just sort of perception risks in terms of the competition.
Yeah, great, thanks. The next thing you mentioned was the arm's length funding, or sort of the arm's length relationship, and the municipality obviously sort of leads with the funding and is pretty significant contributor to the authority. In these other municipalities, do they at least have a seat on the board, or what's the? Oh, they do. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the regular funding mechanism, I am assuming that's sort of a yearly contribution or an annual contribution from the city. What are we talking about? Like in a municipality of a similar size, like what is that, how much? What does that look like?
Do you want me to go, Sandy, or do you want to go?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things we did in phase one was look at all of the different corporations that currently exist in British Columbia, and the sort of approximate dollar value per year would be around $200,000 to $250,000. That's what we pulled from Tofino, which is kind of the most closely related to Nelson. That typically would include all of your operations costs, staffing costs, overhead costs, and additional, it would not include the value of the equity value of the land that you'd be contributing as well to the corporation.
So if we contributed some equity value in land, that would be over and above the 250. So our contribution would be higher. And then does that, what is generally done in terms of tax breaks or tax concessions? Is that a net, the 250? Like, would you kind of tax at regular rates, and then there would be you would give a break, and then that would go to the operational costs, or what does the tax picture look like?
It's a good question. I'm not 100% sure what the tax picture would look like. I can tell you that in many communities, the developments themselves would be exempt from property tax at the local level. So that is one way that you can continue your contribution to nonprofit housing. You've probably already done similar relationships like that to existing nonprofits and existing housing units in your community, but I'm not sure how it would work in terms of the operations costs and the taxes associated with that.
Okay, thanks.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Woodward.
Thank you. Through the chair. So there's this quite large sum coming from the provincial government to help fund affordable housing in the future. Would they not be interested in helping fund setting up these kind of organizations for cities?
It's a good question. I'm sure there is interest in partnering with cities to help fund these sorts of things, but currently there are no grant programs available for them. The BC Housing grant programs are specifically designed to fund the construction of affordable units, not necessarily the infrastructure that goes into operating those units. And I think that part of the reason why we're proposing a short-term recommendation is that that is the funding that is currently available. And if the city would like to take advantage of that for the shortest term affordable units possible to get units built, then this is the best way of doing that within that time frame.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Page.
Thanks, Sandy and Jenna. Maybe you could speak a little bit to the phase 3 component around the business case modeling and some of the opportunities through the costing of leases of those lands and through the revenue potential of the units that are being generated to deal with startup costs over the long term of the assets.
Sure, thanks, Councillor Page. So one of the things we talk about when we're looking at affordable housing portfolios is trying to get to a point where the revenues from the units meet or exceed the costs of operating your portfolio. Often this is called a critical mass of units. Larger nonprofits across British Columbia have reached that critical mass, and the revenues from rents both remain affordable and start putting money back into organizational coffers, which is reinvested into additional affordable housing. When we talk about a housing corporation, that is the eventual goal of that housing corporation. Using the revenues from your units that you operate to continually refill organizational coffers that allows for reinvestment in the community. One of the challenges is that it takes a long time and a lot of numbers, and a high number of units to reach critical mass. So often, cities and municipalities are needing to fund their organization for 5, 10, 15, even longer years at a loss in order to get to that critical mass. A really great example from Burnaby, they just announced the details around their proposed housing authority. They are committing $10.5 million over the next 5 years just to operations costs. That's not including the cost of land and development of new units. And at the end of that 5-year period, I don't think there's any guarantee that they will have enough units built to self-fund future years of development. So it is a pretty significant upfront cost. But eventually, the hope is that you would have enough units in the portfolio that it would become self-sustaining. Does that answer your question, Councillor Page? Just getting at what you were asking about?
It does, and if I may supplemental, Chair, Mayor,
Yes,
Madam.
whatever you want to use.
You didn't hit
Just
your
don't call me
worship.
late for dinner.
So in the business case analysis, is that going to be a component we can put into a local context for both Nelson, but also if we're going to explore these regional conversations, Preston has passed a resolution to explore creating a housing corporation. There's some other interest in other cities. But I think there would be interest around this table to understand how many units does it look like if it's Nelson only, how many units does it look like if it's Kootenay Lake, with partners, where do we start hitting those critical inflection points? Because I think it'll help people scope the idea in their own minds. So that's more of an ask, less of a question.
Okay. Yeah, what we can do is we'll dig into a few nonprofit and corporate portfolios and just see kind of what those numbers look like. Our company, Macola Development Service, or Macola Housing, our sister society, actually has a fairly large portfolio, and I can ask our CEO what his sort of analysis of the critical mass of units for us is. Is it 50 units? Is it 150? Is it 300? Those are good numbers to have and to understand. So yes, we can do that for you.
Thank you.
Councillor Tate.
Thanks for all this work that you guys have done. I've been through a couple of the presentations and was engaged in the process, so I'm loving it all packaged together like this. I'm just trying to picture it for those who haven't sat through a lot of these meetings. Just based on the immediate steps, the recommendations, the immediate steps are to identify land for disposal, and then through a formalized process, identify a partner who could operate it, and maybe explore financial options for the pre-development stuff. My question is the money for the building of the building. The building itself doesn't seem to be captured in those recommendations. And I know that comes later, but when we talk about 200,000 to 250 to like build the resource, the corporation, the arm's length corporation, but we don't have the money to build the building. There are the grants. Is that going to be enough?
Yeah, exactly. So the money to actually build the units would come from a lender like BC Housing. So in order for them to lend, a lender or a funder. So BC Housing's Community Housing Fund has usually two components. The first is a grant on the door. That's that $158,000 Jenna talked about.
Yep.
There's also an ongoing operating subsidy, which helps subsidize and keep those rents affordable over the life of the building. And then the third thing is financing to actually build, so construction financing to actually build the building. So they kind of act as both a lender and a financer to get these buildings built. A grantor and a lender to get these buildings built. But they won't just lend to you based on an idea. The pre-development money that we're suggesting be a kind of a role that the city or the RDCK could play takes you from an idea to a point where you've a limited risk in the actual building. You've done all of your site studies, you've done your geotechnical and your environmental, and you've done architect work to actually show what the building could look like, and then you've done all of your work to prepare for operations of that building. How many units? What are the rents going to be? How will those rents be covering your costs of your building? What's your staffing plan for that building? All of those pieces need to be in place before they will consider lending out the grant and the money to get you to construction. And in a very competitive process, and right now in British Columbia, the process is incredibly competitive. The less risk your project has and the more work you can do before going to a lender and a funder like BC Housing, the better.
Okay. And just to follow up, please, Mayor?
Yes.
So that one, just because I'm not a builder, so I'm just trying to understand it. So suppose all of that magic happened and we are secure and we look great to the grantor and lender, who is the same person, and we get $158,000 per door. That based on construction costs today, is a 316 square foot unit. Like, it's not enough to build something, right? Do I understand that correctly? We still need building money. So that's the lending part of it?
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
And
sorry, go ahead, Grant.
I'd also add too that there is CMHC funding that also kind of helps to close some of that gap too. But CMHC funding only becomes available if you've secured another like source, right? So if you have BC housing funding, you can often go to CMHC and say, I have a gap, and they're not going to fill the whole gap, but they're going to fill a portion of the gap. And then that also kind of reduces the amount that you have to finance as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Councillor Payne, and then back to second round with Councillor Page.
So I just want to clarify something that Councillor Tate pointed out in one of the meetings that we were at. These will now become assets within a corporate entity that belong to the City of Nelson. So now we'll have real estate assets in addition to the assets that we have. So am I jumping too far by saying that over 100 years ago, when the governance of the time invested in Nelson Hydro, that was a similar type of investment in our city? You have a very confused look on your face.
Oh, no, because I have a question. You've just prompted a question for me. I didn't have any questions, but now you've prompted, I'm just, so keep going.
Okay, so it would be an asset for the city. So we have this huge asset in Nelson Hydro, and this would be another type of asset. And as we've seen, so we're providing a service that is much needed, a critically needed opportunity to affect the housing deficit that we have here. At the same time, investing in an asset that will grow and be a multi-generational benefit to our community, both, pardon me?
Revenue generator.
Revenue generator, because as these, I mean, one of the examples, when you talked about going back, but I thought of the Kiwanis, who has invested in those buildings around town, Kiwanis 1, 2, 3. I believe the mortgages are paid off on those buildings. So now those are revenue generating assets that are providing income to further invest in there. And maybe some of the details I don't have 100% correct, but they've been around long enough that I'm sure that's the situation. So is that the sort of example that you were talking about, Jenna? Where these organizations own them and then it just becomes a revenue generator that they can further invest in?
Exactly. And I think it's whether you proceed, I mean, I'm not 100% up on the founding of Nelson Hydro, but obviously I understand that that's a really valuable asset to your community. I think whether or not you proceed with just the short-term recommendation or you move on to proceeding with the long-term recommendation, both are investments within your community. One, you're investing in a corporation that is ideally reinvesting its profits back into non-market and affordable housing. If you're investing in existing nonprofits, they have a proven track record and are absolutely committed to your community, and you're investing in a values-driven nonprofit organization who also has a mandate to keep reinvesting in Nelson. So both are similar investments in the generational future of your community.
Thank you.
I'm going to go with if you...
Just a clarification on what Councillor Payne said. But
Okay, yeah, sure. Nope, you can go right ahead.
I'm confused about some of the terms, and just for clarification, in terms of being an asset, it's a social asset or a culture, you know, it's got social capital that it's building, but I don't think it's not there's no return to the taxpayer like Nelson Hydro is.
There could be.
In the sense that it
Could be.
in an amazingly great scenario, but I don't think that that's in any way should inform our thinking, because just in terms of the cost of development, the time. I mean, if it was kind of a down payment on a prefab industry that then would turn around and that would be maybe some sort, but the city wouldn't own it. Like, I just want to clarify that when we're talking about asset, I think this is a great idea and I'm really supportive in many ways, but I don't think it's an asset in the same way that Nelson Hydro is an asset.
They'll appreciate. Real estate won't appreciate? Real estate.
Well, in this model, the real estate we already own. And we're passing it on to this corporation in which the returns, if any, there are any returns, they just get reinvested back into more housing. There's nothing in this model, as far as I understand, that delivers a return to the taxpayer, just to be clear. So it's not an asset in that sense.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think there are.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely see what you're saying. Whereas Nelson Hydro generates like a revenue return to the taxpayer every year. I can totally understand why they wouldn't be one-to-one. I think that you are, however, correct in sort of characterizing it as a social asset, and I think there is potential for revenue generation with these units. Many of the different portfolios that we see across the province include both heavily affordable units as well as close to market or even market priced units, and those both offset the affordability of the other units in the portfolio and can generate a return on investment that would be reinvested in the corporation or into the nonprofit society. So I do think there is a potential for that, but obviously we are investing in these units in order to ensure affordability, and our goal would be the cheapest rents possible, or the rents that serve your community best, as part of that return.
Yeah,
You can go and then I'll go.
Okay.
I'm still,
so I think what's important is, as the municipal and whatever partners we may go ahead with, we have that opportunity after business cases have been developed and with the guidance into those business cases to define what that model does look like. And I would remind, I think if we look back 15, 20 years and look at the cost of construction then and what mortgages would have been serviced, there's a certain value here in locking in construction costs at today's costs, knowing that as the rest of the economy keeps moving, and it's the direction it has been moving for a very long time, what may not be considered affordable at the completion of a project in 5 or 6 years, an additional 10 years after that might look quite attractive, and then another few years after that might start to be in the affordable range. But because we're not flipping and those units are not moving inside of the market in the more traditional sense, we're not getting those additional value increases that go along with time. But if we make the choice that there's an expectation of a dividend at some certain point, then that goes into the costing, whether it be in the lease for the building, if we're just doing the operator's agreement, however we're structuring the land disposal, are we leasing it, are we selling it, whatever those choices are. If we go in with the value that there should be a return after 15 years, then the costing that goes into those projects, given the restraint of whatever the funders are willing to do, can, like any other business, provide the investor with a dividend and a benefit of a financial component. And much like the hydro example, we may look back in 100 years and see something that is actually supporting the city in multiple ways as opposed to just the housing. So I think that's part of the thing, that's part of the structure we can ask for at this municipal table when forming that corporation, because it does not have to be presumed to make no profit. It can make profit for its investors if we so choose to do that.
I'm also watching the room for the other.
My question, I'm really interested in the pre-development fund conversation, and I'm wondering if that's part of what we want to refer to a business meeting to start the conversation with the regional district about getting something put together to collect and then disperse pre-development funds. Because I think we have to somehow formally begin the conversation to ask our partners to start developing those funds regardless of whether we build a corporation. It is pretty clear that we're not going to move in on big projects. See lots of naughty heads up there. We're not going to move forward on big projects that are going to address this problem if we don't first have the capacity to really spec them out and say, it's this building at this location, much like we did with the library, but we need multiple options to be sending to funders as we go through these cycles so that we are positioning ourselves. Is this a place, Mayor, where we refer this to a business meeting?
I think that, I mean, we can have some more discussion in terms of, a few things have come up, and I hate sort of being the last person to talk, because when our next presenters come in, we will. I mean, it's not to say that we don't, this doesn't come to a business meeting, that we just have more information brought to us. Just to go back to your question around, or concern around pre-development funding, that seems to be where there's, having gone through hearing this presentation now, myself, for this is my third or fourth time, like Councillor Tay was saying, that seems to be the sticking point. But I've also heard that when I was at UBCM, that there's actually funding available for pre-development. My concern is having a discussion with the Regional District of Central Kootenay, only in as much as that when I look at this plan and where this plan has landed now through phases 1 and 2, is that the press is on to that this has to be a municipal undertaking, and that at some point later on that we could maybe look at having some further conversations with the Regional District of Central Kootenay. So at this point, I don't think bringing back to another business meeting to let's go and press the RD for pre-development funding is appropriate, because I haven't heard that in these presentations, as they've gone through their iterations and sort of landed on a plan, is that that they're in for sort of a financial contribution. I could be completely wrong on that, but that's just from the last time that this presentation I heard it, when I was invited to come to the meeting to hear the close of phase 2. I also understand that we have enough money left to do phase 3, whatever that iteration looks like, and I would leave that to the NAEDP, who's been leading the charge on this, to decide what are the vital questions that have to be asked within phase 3. We did say that we would commit to assisting as necessary for this study to be completed, so I think completion is also key. So I think, and I'm not too sure that we have to come back to another business meeting. We've already allocated that money, so money is already there. So I don't think we have to be bringing back to business meeting to move forward with monies to finish off the study. My concern is this concept of that this housing becomes an asset of the city. And to be honest, that actually makes me quite nervous. Having lived through the late 90s, where there was quite a move amongst concerned citizens in Nelson who did build social and affordable housing here. And over time, their committee could no longer recruit members of the community to participate on their board. And if it hadn't been for the 11th hour of Nelson Cares stepping forward, it's hard to say where the management of those housing units within the city would go to. So I'm always a little bit cautious on that. And I'm also not seeing where the city, that this now becomes a city asset, like Nelson Hydro or the Civic Arena, because they're either going to belong to the nonprofit, as does the Nelson Cares buildings all belong to that as the nonprofit, or else it's going to belong to the housing entity. So I see the responsibility in any return on investment. So if they do make a profit, it should get put into them to do more with. I am a bit nervous about making a comment that this housing stock then becomes an asset of the city because the city owns it. I don't think the cities are supposed to be in the housing business. We're supposed to help facilitate in whatever way we can. I don't know that we're supposed to be the owners of the buildings. It adds to our role of other properties. And as we all look at budgets and going forward on terms of talking about asset management, I'm not too sure what the position of the city is to be able to take on any more bricks and mortar types of assets going forward. And the example of Kiwanis is that, yes, they are a nonprofit. They do some good work, but I know that they are struggling to even be able to maintain the housing that they have now. So even though they've got no mortgage, which is great, their sort of income that they're bringing, because they're still, they've not put up rents because they're trying to service a segment of the population that needs low-cost housing. They struggle because while the rent might not have gone up, the having to fix the plumbing or put a new roof on any of those buildings that they have comes with an extraordinary cost. They do have a relationship with BC Housing, so hopefully they can reach out from time to time as they need to have repairs and such. But yeah, that's just that's my concern around who these assets belong to over the long run. I think that council probably wants to have more discussion going forward, but I'm thinking that we're still all in the favor of, I mean, this is a COW meeting, this was for information. We needed to hear from the proponents what the final report of phase 2 was. I'm thinking at this point that I think we're all in consensus that phase 3 should continue to move along, and I think you've heard some questions and some concerns from councillors as to the direction that maybe phase 3, that we have some more answers in terms of like, how many units determines the critical mass when this finally turns the corner? What is the cost? Is it 200,000? Is it 250,000? Or is it 300,000 that we're expected to go to taxpayers to fund this over multiple years? I mean, we're not Burnaby, but I also happen to know that Burnaby has a stockpile of money. I think they have $1 billion reserve war chest in the city of Burnaby that they can probably draw out 10.5 million from. I don't think, unless Chris Jury has been hiding some money from us, I don't think we have a stockpile like that anywhere in Nelson. So, anyways, I think it's an interesting conversation. We know that housing is an issue here in the city of Nelson, as it is in many communities across the province. And I actually am looking forward to probably getting some more things I can really hold on to as phase 3 progresses on. So I want to thank Andrea and Tom and Jenna and Sandy for joining us again, and look forward to how this moves forward through phase 3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny and Simon.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom and Andrea.
So I'd like to call up now our Jill? Is it Jill or is it Gil? It's Giles. Giles, thank you. Giles and Gregory, I believe. Giles and Gregory are crisis intervention specialists who work for Provincial Health Service Authority, and they are part of what's referred to as the Mobile Crisis Intervention Team. And one of their roles is to help frontline workers, advocates, perhaps even city councillors who are feeling that maybe they're not coping all that well. I learned last month at the Nelson Fentanyl Task Force meeting that they also do some response work for fire and flooding to just add to their workload. And hopefully that they've got a crisis intervention team that comes to help them when they get stressed. This is a small team of 10 individuals who work throughout the province. And I thought it would be really interesting to have them come and let us know a little bit more about their work. We all travel in circles where we see people in crisis and in need all the time. And I think that for us as councillors and staff to have an understanding of this, we can also help facilitate discussions with our colleagues and our friends that we feel might be in need of the services that you provide. So the floor is yours, gentlemen.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having us. My name is Giles Ringer. I am from Kelowna. I almost said Kamloops. Always do. Yeah, I've been part of the Provincial Mobile Response Team for approximately just about 3 years now. Yeah, that's where I am. I'm originally from Manitoba, but live in the Silk Traditional Territory. And yeah, just so far, it's been a beautiful period of time learning the role of this. I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself as well, Greg.
Yeah, my name is Gregory Nickel. I live in Kamloops, so Giles and I, we cover all of interior health together, so Williams Lake to the Kootenays. So the big workload, and yeah, like the mayor said, we are just here to provide support for people who work on the front line. So we support frontline agencies, nonprofits who are working within the overdose crisis. We support first responders, fire, police, ambulance, volunteer fire, peers as well. During COVID as well, our mandate got it expanded to support long-term care and hospitals. So our mandate is massive. We run mostly by a policy of not saying no to people who, if they reach out for support, even if they may not fall into our mandate directly. Basically, if you work on the front line, we will support you.
We're funded through the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions as well. So under PHSA, Provincial Health, and then Health Emergency Management BC, that's where the health emergency side is what you spoke to with the floods and fires. We expand out. We also provide support to ski patrols. So I was present during the Panorama avalanche. So it really expands quite broad. We have members on our team who come from victim services. So that's another area that we connect. So we're connected with, for instance, 2 weeks ago, I was in Fernie, met with victim services individual, I was going to say team, but the individual there. And so we provide mainly, we're a mental health support team. So we want to make sure that individuals know that there is someone they can reach out to if they're feeling overwhelmed, whether that be from work or from life. We come around and we're actually here for the week because, as Greg said, we do cover all of interior health. We had some calls for support. We know that the drug toxicity is high, that overdoses are quite certainly a lot, right? We're losing 6 people a day currently. And so we want to make sure that people that are on the front line, including those that are there who are using substances and turning over overdoses of their peers, also have the support. And so what we do is we basically are present. We come into spaces. We provide education like this. I pass around the pamphlets, postcard basically. That gives a bit of information. We've left some pamphlets at the back, taking care of ourselves and our communities, and responding to stressful events, self-care for caregivers. So we have a broad spectrum of supports we can provide, including education and workshops. But then really the other part is we come in and we create a safe space for individuals to be able to just let anything off their shoulders that they need. We're funded through the government, as I said, but at the same time, we come to it where we're not coming with any political ideologies or anything. We're there basically grassroots, trying to make sure people know that they have somebody they can reach out to in the moment that they need. So on all of the postcards, you can see there's a toll-free number at the back. I've also left a bunch of business cards. So those toll-free number can be reached out to. It's an intake line that we have. It's open 24 hours, and we're not a 24-hour team because as there's 2 of us who cover all of interior health, where there could be 15 to 25 or 100 of us, there's 10 of us that cover all of BC. So we're not 24 hours, but we do respond within 24 hours or the next business day if it's on a weekend. We also come in and we'll do a debriefing if there's a critical incident, whether it be related to an environmental crisis like a flood or fire, or if it's related to major incidents like VMAs, motor vehicle accidents, or MVAs, as we've been in Logan Lake, things like that. So whatever is needed, we do our best to provide it, and if we can't, then we look at how we can. And that may be expanding to our team that sits parallel and next to us, which is within MBC, Health Emergency Management BC, to provide those supports however is needed.
Yeah, the way we provide support is we can come in and provide in-person support. So whether that's one-on-one supports, group supports, like Giles said, a formal critical incident debrief, we're trained in the CISM model. So it is the Mitchell model, so it's more paramilitary. So we do try to tailor it to the agencies and the places that we're going to. We're very flexible in what we provide, but we also provide things over the phone, over Zoom, over text message. So first responders, frontline workers, they can basically just reach out to us. And we're just here, like Josh said, just to filter some of that heaviness that people may go through on their day-to-day, understanding that personal life and work life does merge to a very, very large degree, and especially people who are working on the front lines, sometimes open themselves up to a lot more just traumatic things that they may see. So that's what we're here for. Like I said, we are very flexible. We understand people who are working on the front line, whether that's shift work, life in general. We just try to just come in and, like I said, be another support for people. Even if they do have employee family assistance programs and benefits and things like that, we're just another avenue of support. Like I say, we're salespeople 50% of the time because our team started in 2017, but not a lot of people know about our team and what we do. So that's why we're trying to come out here and do a lot of this in person and really meet people and let people know there is another avenue of support for people who are working in the cities and just in the province in general.
Everything that we provide, or MRT provides, is free and confidential. So whether that be mental health first aid, whether that be workshops on understanding stress injury or boundaries, all of those are free. So especially for individuals or for agencies that are nonprofit working frontline that don't have a lot of extra funding to go and provide something like mental health first aid, which can be quite cumbersome, $200 to $300 per person for 2 days. We do it for free, and so we can really bang it off and make sure and tailor it to a way that individuals get the information that they need, get the education that they need, so they can get their certificate. Also, without having the barrier of paying for it. So, going back to the low barrier and opportunity for individuals to reach out to us. On our business cards are our business numbers, and those we always recommend that individuals just reach out to us via text or phone call. Text is always really easy to say, I'm from this agency or from this town, just need a little support, and then we follow up with them as soon as we can. We can make plans that way. We're very low barrier, and really just want to try and come in and provide support where support is needed, however it's needed. Yeah.
Councillors, do you have any questions? Oh, okay. If you need to step out, that's okay. I was like, Councillor Woodward.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you very much for coming. So your mobile response team, but you also seem to be able to access a lot of like electronic Zoom, and so you can actually respond quite quickly through all the new technology, I guess.
For sure. Yeah, we can do debriefs or diffusings directly virtually if they would like that. I mean, things and workshops are different. They're a little bit easier, but in general, people really enjoy the one-on-one in person. Mm-hmm. And it really depends on what the reason why. We always, when we receive a call for support, whether it be related to a workshop or debriefing or anything like that, we try to do a really robust assessment to identify what the needs actually are. So they may say, we would like stress injury. So what are you dealing with right now? Well, we've got some of our employees are really meshing maybe their boundaries a little bit, and then we go, okay, well maybe we need to do a different type of workshop, or maybe we just need to come in and do a guided conversation, providing those supports. So yes, we can do things virtually. Yes, we can do them over the phone, or we can come in person. It's really, there is no barriers for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great work.
Councillor Payne.
So you've been in Nelson for a couple of days now?
I drove in yesterday.
Okay.
It's only a 4-hour drive, so we did have one person that was working this area who was from the Lower Mainland, and they always had to fly into Cranbrook and then drive over. With Greg in Kamloops, he drove down today, and I drove down yesterday because I did a course all day in my hotel room. So we can just drive in, but yes.
Can I ask what your sense is of the frontline workers in Nelson? Is that an appropriate thing? Like, I'm trying to get a flavor because I do attend.
How they're managing, do you mean, or?
Yeah, how it. If you looked at the provincial landscape, I do attend the Nelson Committee on Homelessness meetings, I think, and then Nelson Fentanyl Task Force meetings. So I'm hearing on a regular basis many of the challenges and feeling that. Anxiety and stress and all of those things that you deal with every day. And I don't even know. I hope somebody's looking after you really well as also.
Self-care is a big
So I'm just trying to get an understanding. Are we in the medium? There are things going on everywhere, or is that a fair thing to ask?
It's a very fair thing to ask. It's a hard question to answer. From our perspective, we see a lot of heaviness. a lot of heaviness, especially in some of these smaller-ish towns with not a lot of resources. We're seeing a lot of heaviness and a lot of it falling on the workers. I know, especially in even the task force meeting, a lot of conversations about, shutting services down, and then now going into the wintertime as well too, right? There's a lot of, things, and just the drugs themselves are bad, right? There's no denying that. They're very bad, and that's just another toll on the workers. We're seeing a lot of heaviness, a lot of tiredness, right? I like to say, sometimes we're going into places and people are physically there, but, mentally you can see they're dealing with a lot of things. So, and that's just one of the reasons our part of our job is to try to support people, and just keep them going by filtering some of that heaviness that they may go through. But, provincially, you guys are on par, right? Which is, it's just heavy. I was in Williams Lake. I was in Williams Lake a couple weeks ago, the same issues. I was in Vancouver for a conference, the same issues, right? We have people on the island, right? We're all dealing with, bad drugs, the cost of living going into the winter time. So, a lot of just heaviness that we're seeing on people.
I would say that is the big the thing that changes is the drugs. They get worse. I can't even say they get better. They just get a different type of worse. And with that, you have individuals that need to continue to use for their own safety, for whatever reasons, and the drug supply is getting more and more toxic. In Port Alberni, there was just a recent drug alert, and that supplier is no longer around. So benefit that those drugs aren't out there on the streets. Downside is now what is going to happen to the community. So we may end up experiencing a higher rate of, who knows, right? Like use or violence or homelessness or anything like that. So it constantly ebbs and flows. We get drug alerts all the time just for interior health for me on my phone. So when Trail got hit last year really bad, we heard about it and then we went down to check on them as well. So Nelson, it's unique in that the community is unique, right? But not that the drugs are better here, not that the frontline workers are doing better here, or that the population of those living rough are doing better here or worse. Yeah.
Councillor Pinero.
Thanks. I'm just kind of wondering, you sort of spoke to it a little bit, how every traumatic situation that you deal with, I think, affects many different people in many different ways. And so you can have one overdose death that's traumatic for the people responding to that death. It's traumatic for the people that lost somebody that they cared about. It's traumatic for the people who had somebody die in front of their house. And that intersection of tragedy, I think we've all sort of dealt with over the last few years here, and the different sides to that same situation, and we all kind of hear those different sides as a city. And what I'm sort of wondering if you guys have the capacity for, wouldn't call it conflict resolution, but for healing from these traumatic events and bringing the diverse sides of one event together into sort of a group setting or something where our capacity as a community is actually built, rather than just dealing with the first responders' trauma and just dealing with the people that were living beside that person that died's trauma, and just dealing with the homeowner who had this happen on their front lawn, as separate entities, whereas actually just one event that is affecting everybody, and that shared trauma as a community that we all deal with. And if there's a capacity in your experience or an upside in dealing with those situations as a whole, rather than a bunch of separate issues.
I think the best way that we could speak to that, and I would, caveat here, we don't have the ability to go stand downtown when there is like a convoy march and a Soji march right? Like we don't have that ability to try and bridge those relationships, because it's clear that our society and our nation is divisive and you know, quite oppositional in certain opinions. So we don't have the opportunity to do that. But when we were most recently in Logan Lake, we set up at the fire department, and it was a community event, and the fire department had a barbecue. We came down, we introduced ourselves, we had a table, and so community members could come in and they could talk to us about whatever it is they did, or any questions they had, or who we were and whether we could do anything for them. And so we have the ability to do something like that. We have the ability to be on certain things like Wellness Exchange, which is a free service that is put out that we actually have trainers for. And the Wellness Exchange is a 6-week program done in 1 day increments, like only a couple hours. And it just goes through identifying certain things in yourself that you want to work on to sort of feel better with your mental well-being. And that could be related to the person that died on your front yard, or it could be, so we're able to do things like that can be a bit broader, instead of coming in directly to the fire department, directly to frontline workers. So in that way, yes, we can provide more community-based supports. I don't know if that sort of answers your question, but I think really for questions related to the compounding factors of a community incident that a large amount of people experience, and whether that be the amount of individuals living rough, the amount of overdose you're experiencing, the amount of theft or violence or fires or whatever it is, those conversations, those questions can come directly to us, and we can figure out a way to try and provide the best support possible. So and if it can't go to our manager at MRT, then we pass it to our manager at HEMBC, and that manager then has one more and then goes to the minister. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's great. So I knew that there would be lots of questions for you, but we're on a really tight time schedule, and I really want to thank you for coming in, because I think it's just to educate council. I mean, so many of these issues are provincial or federal issues, but in terms of we are the grassroots, we are the front line in some respects in terms of being the local government, and I just sort of think making sure that council has skills and contacts and information that they can use when they're confronted and when they're stressed, because that happens to us here too. And I just want to note that, of course, we all have EFAM. We're fortunate enough to have that process here. But sometimes I think EFAM can take a while to get somebody to talk to. And the fact that, you know, usually when you're in crisis, and telling me that, you know, we'll have the bed in rehab in 6 months, or we'll have this available to you in 3 weeks, or, you know, today I'm having the crisis. And so the ability to have another option for a 1-800 number to call to and maybe have a debrief or a de-escalation with the person, I think is really key, just to sort of get the situation sort of under control and to be able to take a deep breath and then move on to other aspects that we can look at within the medical sort of system or whatever that we need to look at. So I want to thank you both for coming again. I'm glad that you're in our community, and hopefully that you have a great time. Last week this weather was better, but you know, this week, and I'm sure that a number of people, you know, you've dropped in a couple times now on our Nelson Fentanyl Task Force meetings. It's been very valuable. That first meeting, and immediately, you were only there for about 3 minutes, and I went, I got to get this guy to, and I came into the office that day, and I said, we need them to come to a committee of the whole meeting to give us an update on what they're doing. And you caught the ear of one of the Minister of Finance's executive assistants, and wants to talk to you about trying to expand the number of people that, you know, 10 isn't quite enough for the whole province of British Columbia, so you never know what might happen there. You know, when you get the ear of the Minister of Finance, things could happen. So thank you again for coming in.
You're very
Thank you
welcome.
for leaving your information
You
and
betcha.
cards,
I'll leave
please.
it all the back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
If I could have a motion to recess, please. Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page. All those in favor? Okay, and we'll be back at 7 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Somebody just mentioned, yeah.
There was just
that's
two
it.
in there.
Oh, we own that. Coke Works.
There's a little corner down there. Yeah. Somebody just mentioned it as a possibility. I opened up all comers. Sit down.
And we're live? Okay, everybody, if I could have a motion to reconvene, please. Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Tate. All those in favor of reconvening, and that's moved and carried. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay. And I would like to ask Lynn Chartier, or the Director General, on behalf of the Association of, come on up, Association de Francophones de Kootenay Ouest, known in the community as AFKO, is pleased to present to Nelson Council as October's cultural presentation. AFKO has the mission to promote French language and its culture throughout the West Kootenay region since 1986. AFKO is known for its community center on 807 Baker Street, where they offer French lessons and access to a substantial library of French books. AFKO brings traditional maple toffee to winter events and organizes the Francophones event in June at Lakeside Park. AFKO is happy to have the opportunity to educate new council members and those in the community that may not know about their organization or their services, activities, partnerships with other local businesses and associations. So, over to you, Lynn, and welcome to City Council.
Thank you. Good evening. Bonsoir. So today I'm here because many new City Council members probably might not know AFKO very well. So there is more than 45 Francophone associations throughout BC. And some are provincial, some are regional, some are local. AFKO, us, the West Kootenay Francophone Association, is actually regional. And we just celebrated our 37th birthday 2 days ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And AFKO has for mission to promote French language and its culture, but also to gather and represent Francophone and Francophiles throughout the West Kootenays. And talking about the territory, we actually have a territory of 7,000 square kilometers. It's not just Nelson. So it's actually Caslo, Revelstoke, Nacos, Stoke and Valley, Grand Forks, Rossland, Creston, Salmo, Castlegar, everything in between, and Nelson, where our offices and community center is on Baker Street. So I am not the principal of the French school. I get that every week for 11 years. No, but French schools and French immersion program, they are our partners. But no, we are not related. So the 2021 statistics from Statistics Canada released in July, they show that more and more people speak French in BC. Actually, in Nelson, it's 13% of Nelson population that carry a conversation in French. And 15.7 in Rossland, 11.5 in Revelstoke, and 10.5 in Slocan. And this is actually a lot more than many places in BC. And the number of people with French as their first language has increased like very steadily since 1991. And 2021, it reached an historical peak. It's actually 11,270 people more. So it's a lot. But you talked about our activities, but I will say it again. So we offer a sugar shack in Salmo, Christmas brunch at Tagum, Francophite big stage, free music at Lakeside Park in June, AFKO fait son show at Door Royal, it's a talent show, French movies in March, art workshop, monthly events, 0 to 5 years old animation weekly, 50 years plus club, art club, music shows, and more. I only have 5 minutes. And our services, we have a community center, we have a French library of 4,000 and more books. And we welcome newcomers and visitors, and we offer French conversation groups, French lesson, weekly radio show, Voilà Page and the Nelson Star, and screen printing studio and classes, podcast and DJ studio that anyone, you don't need to speak French to access. And in our last report, we had 720 visitors at the community center, 1,700 books borrowed, and 2,025 participants in our events, and 2 part-time employees, and 3 part-time project coordinators. So we're busy, and it's fun. Actually, it's nice, busy. And our many precious partners are Nelson Star. It's 10 years that we have Page Voilà in the newspaper. Thank you so much. Kootenay Co-op Radio, 24 years with Meli Melo since they started in the building not so far from here, this way. And Whitewater with their winter carnival. We do taffy on snow, so I don't know, many years, at least 10, because my daughter was a baby. Oxygen Art Center, screen printing class we do together. Kootenay Kids, we have the Petit Matin, 0 to 5 years old with them. The Royal, we do Enjoy My French and the French Wednesday, the Work BC, Polka Dot Festival, Nelson Library, the school, and more. So we really enjoy partners in the Nelson. And talking about French schools, there's one in Nelson, Rossland, Revelstoke, and soon in Creston. And French immersion program, they are in Nelson, Rossland, Creston, and Castlegar. It's huge in Castlegar. They are the only one with early French immersion. And not to end with a school memory, because I'm not the principal of the French school. Our project right now is a video documentary and podcast about 11 regional French women in the world of outdoor sports. We filmed them like in the mountains, in the lake, and everywhere they are. We did film them. We will project the movie with English subtitle March 8th with the Women Day and at the Royal. So I think you would enjoy that a lot. Everybody is welcome. No need to speak French. So if you speak French or not, we have a lot to offer, and AFKO is for everyone to enjoy. French music, arts, food, local talents, and our community space and art studio. Use us. Voilà. Merci.
Well, thank you so much. What interesting stuff that you're doing. I'm just, March 8th, make sure that you send a little note back to all of us counselors so that we can remember that date for your movie. That sounds very exciting. Counselors, do you have any questions for our cultural presentation for this evening? Anything to ask Lynn? And I'm glad that you asked that, because I was going to ask you if you were the principal of the school, and you nipped that in the bud right away. So, and I understand that the enrollment there is quite high.
Right.
And they go to grade 9 now.
They actually go to high school too, but you're not full time. You just have few class.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's a special program.
Excellent. Councillor Woodward.
Thank you. Through the chair. Just anecdotally, on a personal point, my son now goes to Trafalgar and is in the French program. And they this year they had a funny flip where so it was, typically people went to English language middle school, but everyone heard how great the French program was, and now they're overloaded in the French program at Trafalgar, and they're doing the best. But there's like 29 kids in my son's class. Wow. So French is alive and well in middle school there. So
yeah.
Do you have any connection with these programs in Nelson?
Absolutely.
They're
very close partners. Sometimes they bring their students in AFKO, or they volunteer, or actually their goal is to show that you just don't learn French, but actually people live and work in French. So they visit the French bakery, or they do activities through us, and we actually enjoy that. Right. Doing that.
Well, thank you for your work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Excellent.
For having us.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That was really appreciated. And I'm sure that people have now learned a lot more about AFKO, and I'm going to make a point of dropping into your office and see if you can teach me a few more words that I have forgotten over the years. So, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Have a good night.
The next item on the list is public participation, and I understand there are a couple of people in the audience that want to speak this evening, and I just want to read the little missive here that I have to read for public participation. Public participation period is limited to 15 minutes in total. A speaker may only address council once for a maximum of 3 minutes unless authorized otherwise by unanimous vote of council members present. Speakers must restrict their remarks to items that are listed on the meeting agenda. Speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held prior to council's consideration of the matter, or before adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given prior to council consideration of issuance of the permit. Speakers shall address all comments through the mayor or presiding chair. So if somebody could just put their hand up again there, I believe, Judy, only because I asked you when you came in, and Yale, okay. Maybe Judy, do you want to start? And so come on up to the spot there, and if Keith or Jesse, you could make sure that the microphone is on. And if you could just, when you get up there and get comfortable, if you could tell us what your name is and where you live, would be great.
Denise, we're talking together like one, and then me, and then two past. Do you want us to sit together, or one by one?
Well, two of you can come up right now, and maybe somebody can grab a chair, and then... And is there anybody else in the back there that would like to speak during public time? I just want to make sure that I've got three. I don't want to be leaving anybody out of the option of being able to speak. Okay. Okay, and I do, and as unfortunate as it is, I do run the timer because it's got to be equal and fair for all participants as they come every week, so that we don't change things. So Judy, if you're starting off, if you could just say what your name is and where you live, that would be great.
Yeah, my name is Judy Banfield, and I live 1106 7th Street in Nelson. And I want to thank you for having us here tonight. I know most of you, I just don't know all of you. Okay, mine isn't as teary as the last presentation. On the 7th of October, the world bore witness to a sadistic, violent attack in Israel. 1,400 people, mostly civilians, from babies to elderly, were murdered in cold blood. 222 were abducted. This event has shocked and horrified all the citizens of Israel and most of the international community worldwide, including here in Nelson. It has also provoked worldwide a dramatic increase in anti-Semitic and anti-Israel rhetoric and violence. Some of that rhetoric is here in Nelson as well. I have been and spoken at more than a few council meetings in the 34 years I've been in Nelson. I have spoken out on many issues and have worked hard to make Nelson an even better place. I am Jewish. I have always been very open and proud of that. In addition to being involved in the broad Nelson community, I've also been involved in the Jewish community. Right now, our community is frightened. We are afraid of violence against our community. We do not feel safe gathering together in an announced venue. We have had anti-Semitic incidents in Nelson before. We have had a local church welcome one of the world's most notorious anti-Semites to speak. Thank you. There was a meeting where people called for the picketing of Jewish businesses. Our religious holiday celebrations have been picketed. When our venues are public and invitations are sent to join us in celebrations, whether you are Jewish or not, we have asked for and received protection from the Nelson Police. We are very grateful for that. Our biggest concern is the growth of anti-Semitism in the community from those who adhere to conspiracy theories, extremists, Israel haters, and just straight-out anti-Semites. We do not feel safe, and we are scared. No one in our city should feel unsafe just because of who they are. There should be no place for hate or violence in our beautiful city. And I just want to say thank you for hearing us today. It's a very emotional time for us. And if I sound unsteady, I don't usually sound unsteady, but it's really scary. So thank you for hearing us.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, perfect. 2 minutes.
Hi, everybody. You know me. I did the election podcast. I always promote, speak, and dialogue. I'm an Israeli and Canadian and Jew, a Canadian citizenship and Jew. I lived in Nelson for the last 7 years and always felt welcome and absolutely safe here. This Sunday, I attended the pro-Palestinian rally in front of the city hall. I feel for the Palestinian people, empathize with their struggle, and I wanted to listen, learn, and open myself up to their pain. The event was supposed to be about peace and education. I actually reached out to the organizer asking to speak in the event, or one of the Israeli or Jewish people to speak in the event, and was denied. This wasn't a peaceful event. This was an anti-Israeli and anti-Semitic rally. Let me give you some examples. First of all, a person holding a sign, "Free Gaza from Hamas," was pushed and covered by another member of the rally, to the extent that the police had to intervene. One of the speakers denied the beheading of Israeli babies at the hand of the Hamas terrorist. Another speaker repeated the lie of the Israeli bomb hitting a hospital in Gaza, which was proven by different and countless times to be false. The third, that the IDF was attacking Gaza Strip simply because they can, ignoring the October 7th massacre. A final speaker said, "Don't hate Hamas. They are our brothers, our sons, our fathers." At that point, I couldn't stay anymore and left. To top of that all, a city council member spoke at the rally, creating a perception of legitimacy. While there was no direct threat to us or to Jewish people in town, it was implied. And that makes me feel terrified. Brings up all the trauma. Canada recognized Hamas as a terrorist organization since 2002. Hamas' main goal is to kill Jews and destroy Israel. This is their charter. Check it out. Rallies that support Hamas promote violence and murder of Jewish people. Me and the people that sit here. This is directly threatened us, the Jewish community in Nelson. We're in full support of pro-Palestinian, we're in full support of dialogue, but there is a line must to be drawn about hate speech, inciting violence, and supporting terrible crimes against humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Yael.
Dear council members, my name is Topaz. I'm an Israeli and I live in Uphill, Nelson. Not as much as the veterans up here, but still. I stand here in front of you today in the name of the Jewish community in Nelson. Despite identifying as this group, we're not asking you to take sides. The Palestinians and whoever supports them have the right to protest as we have the right to do so, and still feel safe in our community. Any person in Nelson should feel safe despite disagreement of place of origin. We believe in creating a discourse and want to promote an open dialogue that would help better understanding this complex situation. In these dark times and hard times for us, we call unity. Although the conflict is thousands of miles away, it hits our homes as well here in Nelson. This is why we ask from you 3 things. First, as has happened before, the presence of police is reassuring and calming in rallies and protests on any side, whether it's supporting Israel or supporting pro-Palestinian. We thank you for that and ask that this will continue. Secondly, we ask your support, keep denouncing racism and condemn any act of anti-Semitism or hate speech that appear at this time against Israelis or Jewish people. This could happen in hindsight to such event as well. Lastly, we ask from the council members to not take political stand. Due to the role as a public representative, even as individual, participating in a rally supporting one side or the other contributes to rhetorics of alienating parts of the community, misleading the public to believe that the council support even this event and therefore has the potential to endanger local citizens in the future. To clarify, For any open dialogue with participation of both sides, we encourage the presence of the Council. What we are asking from you is to support our back in this horrible time. We believe that these 3 requests are doable to stand with the Council and stand with the Council's approach and values of democracy. On a personal level, it will help us ensure the safety of the Jewish and Israeli group and the community of Nelson. Thank you for the opportunity to share our voices and concerns.
Thank you very much, Judy and Yael and Topaz, for coming this evening and speaking to us. So, thank you. So this evening we have a couple of delegations that are coming forward, and our first delegation is from the Community Nelson Food Center. And Andrew, are you? Oh, come on up. So Andrew Creighton, representing the Nelson Food Center, has requested an audience with council to deliver a presentation.
So apparently it's all set up here, so I can just work through this.
Enter the blue lights, then you're on. But you kind of got to speak pretty closely to them.
Okay. And this slide 1, slide 2. Okay, so
Just a moment.
oh, sorry.
Sorry. Just have 3 moments, three minutes to just have a little breather and, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Page.
And Andrew, I'll just get you to move the.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Please. Thank you, Councillor Woodard. Seeing you here.
Yes.
Councillor Woodward, would you mind stepping out and just, okay. Councillor Page is back, so, okay, thank you, we're good, we're golden.
We're good. Are you going?
Yeah, thank you. So background here is the Nelson Community Food Centre is a proud partner of Community Food Centres Canada, national nonprofit that builds health, belonging, and social justice in communities across Canada through the power of food. The Nelson CFC is one of 13 community food centres across the country. Nelson CFC programs include the Good Food Bank, Food Skills, The Garden, and Harvest Rescue. Nelson CFC has recently begun working with United Way as the steward organization for their West Kootenay Regional Community Food Hub. So over to you, Andrew, and welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Morrison, and thanks everybody for being here tonight. I guess it's kind of a long day for you, so I hope you still got a little bit of energy left, and thank you for that pause, the 3-minute pause. That made a lot of sense. I appreciated that. Housekeeping notes, the RFD or whatever that document was said that first of all the Nelson food cupboard was used, and then also it said that I was going to be presenting our strategic plan for the next 5 years. So it is the Nelson Community Food Center, and I'm not going to be presenting about our strategic plan. That was kind of a leftover from an earlier date that we had set, but now I just want to give you all an update. So here we go. And That synopsis was very good. It didn't entirely scoop my presentation, but it kind of, there might be a little bit of overlap. So just to give you an idea of let me put my timer on, an idea of what we're about. Our mission is to create opportunities for people facing adversity to share, connect, and advocate around good food. That's just an overview. And as you heard, we are a member of Community Food Centres Canada. There are now 14 community food centres in the country and 4 in BC. There's one in Kamloops and one in Lillooet and one here in Nelson. So that kind of informs a little bit of who we are. Our strategic plan that I'm happy to share with anyone who wants it has been done. It's full of what we want to do in the next 5 years, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that tonight, but if anybody would like a copy, please let me know and I'll get one to you. So four programs, and actually we have a fifth here. So 4 programs: food skills, what we call our Good Food Bank, the Garden, Harvest Rescue, and advocacy. And advocacy includes, it's kind of a young program and includes things like our tax clinics, which we do to help people with their taxes. Whoops, push the wrong button. So just a couple of pictures to give 2,000 words there. That's our kitchen just in full steam there with people baking bread, and there's a food skills class going on in the kitchen there. So food skills encompasses both cooking classes and community dinners. Just so you know what that is. Our Good Food Bank, perhaps some of you are familiar with that. I know Councillor Woodward might be somewhat familiar with the program. There's not a picture of him here, but our food center garden is it's comprised of those 14 raised beds you see at 602 Silica outside the Nelson United Church. There's a good little indication of what a sunny day looks like. That's actually not now because it's kind of winding down a little bit. Next up, Harvest Rescue. That's where we pick fruits and distribute them through our Good Food Bank and other social service organizations in town. A great topic for another time would be how we can work with the city on Harvest Rescue and deal a little bit with the bear problem and tree pruning, but that's for another time. But just thought I'd mention that. And just a bit of advocacy is mostly the tax clinic program that we run in the springtime or early year. So part of my wish to come here and give you all an update was I don't know if you read the papers or heard rumors or whatever, but we went through a tricky financial time, and that came about because of things like increased food costs, increased participant numbers, loss of core funding, kitchen renovation costs kind of went through the roof, and COVID aftershock. And COVID aftershock, I think we're all kind of experiencing that, how some organizations were generously funded in times of COVID, and we all know what a crazy time it was, but having to run our programs outside, having to go through all the protocols, it was very difficult. So that was, coming out of that was another factor that came together. So, and when I say early summer, that would have been May, June, and so the next question is, what did we do about it? So we took a deep dive into our accounting and, throttled back on our programming. The Good Food Bank changed to twice a month rather than twice a week, which it was originally. We worked with a local consultant and accountant on a stabilization plan, and we came up with something that was a 3-month plan that we're just coming out the other end of now, and focused on delivering on promises and commitments to existing partners and funders, which is a great way to work, generally. And we also had to adjust some staffing and operational costs. So that was, and now it's kind of, it's mid-fall, late fall, I don't know. But so that was, that period kind of ended at the end of the summer. And we're now back we're in the position now where we're, let me tell you about the Good Food for All matching campaign. It was a fundraising campaign because we obviously needed to fill our coffers again. And kind of kicked off with a $50,000 donation from a volunteer, which was financially empowering, but also kind of spiritually and organizationally empowering to have somebody who supported the organization that much and believed in our mission and what we were doing. So we matched the $50K and raised a total of $135,000, 62 days faster than our target date. You know, these are just kind of numbers. It was more about, there's a lot of fuzzy stuff going on at the same time, but the numbers are kind of interesting too. Anyway, significant donations came from the NDCU and Wildlife Genetics International, and we had 139 other donors. So that kind of brought us back into the state where our organization was more stable, again, more procedural changes like to our accounting practices, to the relationship between the board and staff, and the help of a bookkeeper who's now employed with us, all kind of put the ship in order. So I keep pressing the wrong button. Ooh, whoa.
Now it's blue.
We're gonna have to go back here.
I might be at the bottom.
Play. No, it's changed. The interface has changed.
Oh dear.
Slideshow. Hold on, getting there. From beginning, no. Custom current slide, setup slideshow. From current slide.
Nice.
Thank you, everybody, for your support over the 30 seconds of confusion. We'll move on now, and just an update as far as the programs go, because so the idea was to get our house in order, get funding back in there, and then return to service. So our Good Food Bank is back to once a week, Wednesday from 1 to 4, and we've had a successful garden and harvest rescue program. Those are both kind of winding down. Food skills classes are resuming. We're doing something with Nelson Community Services for youth 18 to 25, and there are four different sessions there. Those are happening. And a community dinner, I thought we were going to have one before the holiday time, but I don't think it's going to happen unless something super special happens. So, but that'll happen in the new year. And those are events, everybody should come. You're all heartily invited to these things. I think some of you have been before, but they're just a great mashup of program participants, donors, volunteers, funders, staff, people coming in off the street. It's just a great time. Also, some new opportunities that we're looking at, and there was an allusion to our relationship with the United Way, and that's something that we're about 8 months into, and we're the steward organization for the, let me see if I can remember it, the West Kootenay Regional Community Food Hub. That's it. And in that role, we are trying to work with other food-based social service organizations, and not even social service organizations, potentially grocery stores, First Nations groups, farms, to try to establish what unique and West Kootenay specific food securities there are. So that's kind of fun, driving around and visiting different parts of the West Kootenay, and different than our normal role, which is more locally based. And also, Together Nelson is an organization that some of you may be with, an organization with which some of you may be familiar. And we're working on tax clinics with them, and those are just in the process of rolling out. So tax clinics, we're going to be partnering with KCDS, Kootenay Kids, and us, and we're going to be delivering tax clinics to people. So we're excited about that. The NCS Food Skills Partnership was, I talked about that a little bit before. That's something with Nelson Community Services, and we are delivering cooking classes there. And the production garden is something that has kind of come up, well, it's actually been in the works for a while, but there's a new development. So it is an idea to have a garden somewhere downtown. And we're currently speaking with members of the planning department here in the city, and we're looking forward to coming back to you soon with more information and maybe some next steps of exploration. A little side note to that, we just got a commitment for fairly significant multi-year funding to roll out that program. So we're stoked about it. That's new news, so I'm really happy about that. Restaurants for Change, you can tell that I'm at least partially a fundraiser because I'm constantly talking about fundraising initiatives. Restaurants for Change happened last week. That was where 14 local restaurants gave us the proceeds of their dinner sales for the October 17th, the Tuesday night. And our numbers are still coming in, but I think it's probably will net about $20,000. And again, it's not just about the money. It was really about people getting together and hopefully talking about food security and supporting a great operation, our operation organization, and also just the work with the restaurants in town. And I'm sure that you all are familiar with many of the restaurants in town, and kind of realizing that we're all in the same business of making connections around good food for folks. And what's good about our relationship with these restaurants is it's really a partnership. It's not like a handout. It's not like a donation. They benefit from this night. We benefit from it, and it's great. Everybody has a good time. And that's kind of it. That's the snapshot. That concludes my comments.
Thank you so much, Andrew. So, anybody have any questions? Councillors, questions? Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to just start at this end because all three hands went up immediately. So, Councillor Lockenberg, Councillor Payne, then Councillor Woodward.
Through the chair, I understood that there was a challenge with the charitable tax status. Is that's resolved, everything? And then is that, has the delay in getting that status, were you able to then sort of recover, or is there any opportunity in front of you to recover potential funding that was sort of related to that, hiccup?
So the charitable status went away in September of last year, and we got it back in early December. Herculean effort and super speedy. That didn't involve so much losing big grants as me having to phone at least 100 donors and explaining the situation, and something as little as telling everybody that we couldn't issue a charitable tax receipt. And that's really what it came down to. And most people understood it. The truth is that if we knew we'd get our status back, so I told people that they can bank 2 charitable donations and their benefit is bigger if they bunch it up in 2 donations in 1 year. But anyway, so that they were the CRA. It was quite an exercise. But anyway, to just focus, yes, that's over with. It took about 3 months of intense work, and just a testament to how people believe in our programs, and they stuck with us, and no, there was no major loss. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you for your question.
Councillor Payne.
I don't know that mine's a question so much, but I always like to, whenever we talk about Nelson Community Food Services, I like to give a plug for the book that called The Stop, that was sort of the foundational piece that grew into the food services. I read it as part of a book club many years ago, and it was gave me a huge understanding of the advocacy piece that can be part of that, and how how many people, it told a lot of personal stories of how many people come to be in the position of requiring the services of the food bank. And it could be any of us sitting here, a head injury, a job loss, so many things. Those stories were really moving and gave me a deeper understanding of how critical it is that we look around and make sure that we're providing for our neighbors now, yesterday, and in the future. So thank you so much for the wonderful work you do. And I would also like to, again, sell the community dinner, because I did attend one. It was great. I'm sorry you won't be having one before Christmas, but I'll definitely be in the new year. I'll keep my fingers crossed in the meantime. So thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Payne. Yeah, the book is The Stop by Nick Saul, and he is the CEO of Community Food Centers Canada. Just a very dynamic, smart guy with his heart and brain in the right place. And this book is pretty good. It talks about, dignity and meeting people where they are, and just what you said about it could happen to anybody, and also this notion of us all being in it together, which I find really compelling. And yeah, so it's a good book.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you very much, Andrew. I'm just wondering about your usage numbers and how are you handling that? It is, COVID was quite a ride around that, and just wondering where you're at these days.
Yeah, so yes, COVID was quite a ride, and I think it's best to say that we've seen kind of a slow increase, going from 2 days a week to 1 day a week. We have more days on that more participants on that 1 day than we did on each of 2 days during the week before. And we also, because this is a somewhat transient city with people coming in tree planting, skiing, Shambhala, all kinds of things. It's not like there's been a steady increase. And when you're talking about COVID, that was very interesting because a lot of the people who usually came to us were getting CERB payments, so they were not in need of food. It was more the people who had recently lost their jobs, were precariously housed, kind of the people that were just taken off their center because of COVID. And so yeah, we're seeing numbers slowly climb, but now a lot of the people who we were seeing before COVID are back with us and taking advantage of the Good Food Bank.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillors, any further questions for Andrew? Okay, seeing none, I just want to say, Andrew, it's good to see that the Community Food Centre is back on its feet and operating and providing the service that it has, and you offer a number of services. I know that we've had Nelson Together has been here to talk about the tax and the importance of financial literacy, and one only needs to go to the grocery store to realize that you really do need to have a degree in financial literacy to get out the other end of that, given the rising costs of food and that whole education around food and purchasing and value of food and getting that balance. So the work you're doing is great. And I just had one question, and it was just about food, like the cooking classes and the food skills and stuff. And have you ever reached out to Selkirk College to be involved in any of that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, a lot of folks from Selkirk College come to our Good Food Bank program, but we know Dave Havman, who works up at the college. He actually volunteered for us a while ago to put on a dinner of some kind, and we know him. And I did ask him if he'd consider running one of our classes, and he said, "Well, I'm just swamped. I can't do it right now." And I could tell that he wasn't fibbing. And I don't think that it would be appropriate for his students to do it, but we have started talking, and hopefully something will come of that for sure. Yeah.
Okay, oh, that's great, because that that inter-collaboration of all of our agencies in town, that the educational programs have so much, and it might just twig maybe some of the people that they're in that age group. When you're talking to me, when I hear 18 to 24, I'm thinking like I might be searching for what it is I might be able to do, and Dave can be pretty inspiring, and maybe that would just be enough to have somebody that looked at whether or not going into that food industry would be something of value. So
yeah, for sure.
Anyways, well, thank you again for coming to join us this evening.
Thank you all. Yep. Good night.
Okay, we have one more delegation this evening. I'd like to ask Mike Stolte and Carrie Croker to come forward, please. They're representing the Nelson Neighbourhood Network, and they've requested an audience with council to deliver a presentation to update council on the group's goals and objectives. The Triple N is a community organization dedicated to fostering a sense of community and neighborly support with a specific focus on safety and respect for all. By fostering community connections, a strong, safe, and thriving community is achievable. Through shared learning and compassion, this group hopes to build awareness around the opioid crisis and better understand the impacts of decriminalization of illicit drug use. So, oh wow, there you go.
Yeah.
Props.
Thanks. I'm Mike Stolte. This is Carrie Croker. I know most of you. I moved to Nelson 28 years ago. I live at 817 Vernon Street, right across from both Stepping Stones and the clubhouse. I moved there 9 years ago with my partner, Fiona Mooney, who died 7 years ago in that house. After that, just to give you a bit of background, I worked with the Kaelin Hospice. I was the Director of Dialogue and Education, created a Community Compassionate Index for the BC Community Palliative Care Association. And most of my work has been around community vitality over the last 20, 25 years professionally. I volunteered quite a bit in the community. I was one of the leads for the Path to 2040, something that's a guiding document with the City of Nelson. So I just wanted to say, give you a little bit of a background. I've never felt under siege. And the last, I would say from about February or March on, as a resident in the neighborhood, I felt under siege. To the point where my partner, who was going to move in with me, who had 2 teenagers, basically said, I don't know, the girls don't want to move in. They find downtown and your neighborhood particularly unsettling. That was just after a home invasion. My neighbor next door had her house broken into. There were 2 incidents in one night. Now, so I've got a few slides to kind of illustrate some of what we heard a lot of in our neighborhood was, I'm scared to walk down the street. Now, this was from a senior, but there were a number of seniors that talked or spoke to this. And not that we are alone. Williams Lake does a survey, do women feel safe walking down the street at night? In the last year, there's been a 500% increase in people feeling unsafe in their downtown. So I think you could sort of say that I don't know what the number would be, but that's a good indicator of the feeling of safety. So there's rising crime. I had 1 call to police in the 28 years I lived here. I've had 15 to 20 in the last 6 months. I'm not a person who complains. I'm a live and let live kind of person. I'm very liberal in my views. But there was a really decreasing sense of safety in our neighborhood. There was open drug dealing. People were emboldened at the clubhouse. It's owned by, as everyone knows, IHA. This was kind of the catalyst for bringing us together as a group. There were frequent overdoses. In 3 years and at 3 different locations, there were 664 call-outs for police, fire, and ambulance services. So in a lot of communities, 1 or 2 calls to police is a nuisance call, which means that people can actually, municipalities have the ability to take action. I know because it was IH, there wasn't a lot we could do, and I know that we had lots of conversation with Janice about feeling very disempowered around IH. And these complaints to IH predate their announcement of a safe inhalation site. Carrie's got a very detailed record of that. There was violence, yelling, threats, music blaring. I was doing a workshop for CBAL, Columbia Basin Alliance for Literacy, to a bunch of youth, and it was 6 or 7 in the evening. It was by Zoom, and I had to actually stop my workshop because someone was yelling, "I'm going to your head off." And this wasn't just an isolated incident. This was a pretty frequent occurrence. I know some of you have probably been down to our end of the street when a lot of this was happening. You're probably familiar with the brochure we put out. Things were quite desperate at the time. We really wanted to, and Janice encouraged me to, she was actually surprised I got through to the CEO of Interior Health, because I don't think you were acknowledged in your letter writing to her. But we really tried to put pressure on IH to more or less do a community dialogue to halt operations because they were seen to be not able to manage the facility. In fact, I would have preferred Hells Angels rather than Interior Health, so IHA to HA, because I think they would have been more responsive, which is unfortunate for a public organization. So we formed in April 2023. We started gathering probably a couple months before that. We've got about 400 Facebook members. Since we formed, we've been asked to help out in a number of communities, including Cranbrook, Trail, Nanaimo, Vancouver, Campbell River, Kelowna, and Kamloops. You may remember this sign. If you did see it, it was only for about 6 hours on a Sunday before someone tore it down. But what we wanted to point out was that extensive consultation took place for the cannabis bylaw, in which the City of Nelson, in their wisdom, decided 150 meters was the minimum setback for any cannabis store, a retail cannabis operation relative to a youth facility. And we wanted to point out that there were a number of youth facilities very close by. I've witnessed a number of arrests and takedowns of people in that neighborhood where young people have been waiting on the corner, and the people being arrested have been uncooperative. And just to point out too, last week, 4 members of that particular street community have been arrested. They were all arraigned in Kelowna this week on different incidents, but 3 of them viciously beat up somebody with a weapon on Baker Street, the 400 block of Baker Street, police report, and the other one was a rock throwing incident down at Lakeside Park. So, this isn't just a homeless issue, this is a criminality issue, and I think that this is where there's some differentiation, that we have to look at this in a different way than we do. I wrote a number of articles on homelessness and with NCOH a number of years ago. This is when the problem didn't have the complexity of the elements that it has today. We've been really fortunate in that we've been able to talk with Interior Health. We've been dealing with Shalon Letwin, who's one of the vice presidents. We were able to get security there. They had said that it was impossible to get 24/7 security. We did some research, found that 2 providers could have security there 24/7 within 12 hours, and lo and behold, the whole problem got quiet really quickly. Now, some of it was displaced to the Cubbies, which I won't talk about. You're familiar with that. Just so you know, some of the things that we've been trying to do, this is my place, this is my partner on the right, Kirsten, and this is a warning sign. I've tried to put up no trespassing signs. I've gone from 0 security, I didn't lock my doors for the first 5 years I lived in Nelson, to 9 security cameras now in and around my house. A week and a half ago, we caught somebody stealing something from our front porch. NCP had the person arrested within a half hour. Jeff Lloyd, my neighbor, also had something stolen, also had it on security camera. We were able to recover these. So the relationship with NCP is working well. Jeff Schechter, I'm not sure if Jeff's still here, but he built us a custom gate so that it fit in with the City of Nelson railing. But these are some of the measures that we're having to take as residents. And I know businesses, Jerix, Nelson Ford, a number of others have spent substantial amounts of money to combat some of the activity that's occurring. So just a little bit about N2. I won't be able to read this, but we call it N2 for short. Ensure the untenable situation at the clubhouse stops. Ensure Interior Health carries out proper and thorough community and neighborhood consultations. And Deputy Premier Farnworth agreed with us on that. Assist the City of Nelson, NIH, identifying possible safe consumption site locations. To that end, Tanya Finley and I have driven around and tried to identify some locations. Through connection information, empower residents, businesses, and organizations. So one of the things I found is that people didn't feel like they had a voice, and those that did speak out were afraid of sort of being chastised or shamed in public. And I think Tanya's been the lightning rod for the organization, and I think it's very unfair. She's received many, many threats, and people threatened to boycott her business as well. To provide a forum where community residents can share stories. To build bridges to NCP, City of Nelson, our MLA and MP, and other leaders and organizations. To get a better understanding of Nelson Care's Stepping Stones facility and build a good neighbor relationship. And we have. Jack Nobis has met with us and our membership, and she's made some significant changes, really done well there. Better understanding the impacts of decrim in our community, and I think I'm happy to say Nelson was out in front of the province on this one. Build awareness around the issues to create a communications network, and finally to create respectful dialogue. I mean, a lot of what I do is community vitality, and it starts with trust and respect and open dialogue and knowing the facts. Our mission is to connect neighbors to ensure a strong, safe, thriving community. Our vision is to live in a flourishing community where people living downtown and in all neighborhoods feel safe, respected, connected, and vibrant or vital. Our community offers a full range of services for all. Our regional neighbors also offer services that are thriving. That one's for you, Janice. We come from a place of compassion, mutual respect, and community-led solutions. So I want to really emphasize we're about respectful dialogue. Community safety, we're a learning organization. We try to connect. We believe in active citizenship, so we're making sure that we empower through connection and information. We're transparent. We expect the same of our leaders. We consult. We make decisions from a place of compassion. We're facts-based. We respond to facts, not ideology or partisan politics. And we're solution-focused. We strive to seek solutions to community issues through respectful dialogue. So a couple just interesting things. Some of you know my background. I'm an economist by sort of back in the day, and I like numbers. Just to give you a perspective on our homeless issues relative to other communities, Surrey, so I flipped the numbers a little bit. So for every 500 or 489 housed people, there is one homeless person. In Greater Vancouver, Greater Victoria, it's about the same. Vancouver, 137 housed people for every unhoused. Nelson, it's 121 people housed to every one person. So we're 400% higher than Surrey and Victoria. We're about 13% higher than Vancouver. Now, they did their counts about a year ago. Sorry, in the spring of this year, our count is from February 1st, 2022. I've talked to a number of people that say that our numbers have swelled in the past year, and if you take that into account, so if you just sort of say ours has grown by 20%, then we're about 40% higher per capita than Vancouver. We don't have the same services. We don't have the same opportunities to take people in and do the things that a Vancouver or Victoria might be able to. And just FYI, homeless population, 71% have substance use issues in Vancouver, 57% report substance use issues here in Nelson, 63% report a mental health issue. This is the point in time count. 50% report a learning disability. Sadly, 37% report having lived in a foster home at some point in time. I'm trying to emphasize that it's a complex issue. We can't use very simple solutions like just more housing. We need to be multifaceted in our approach. So I'll turn it over to Carrie for the conclusion.
Yeah, so we have some requests, and I want to make them really, really clear. And these are based on just trying to keep our community safe and have people. Well, we've looked at other cities and looked at what they've done, and we think maybe some of these would work in Nelson. So one thing that Vancouver does is it has zoning bylaws that are specific to overdose prevention sites. We'd like to see that in Nelson. We would like authentic and open consultation around the location of these sites. The City of Vernon, along with their Chamber of Commerce, has spoken to Interior Health about this. They said there was insufficient community involvement in identifying a suitable location for a prevention site, or even if a facility was necessary. So other cities are seeing this as well. We request a good neighbor policy be created for these sites, and that this policy have clear and real consequences, kind of akin to the Liquor Control Licensing Act that oversees standards for bars and restaurants and then lays out consequences for poor management. Some of these could be like revoking tax exemption status, like in Campbell River. They could be defining something as a nuisance property, like is done in Kamloops, or terminating a lease like the City of Vancouver did for the Yaletown OPS site run by Vancouver Health Authority. When this site was opened in Yaletown, there was an immediate surge in attempted and successful break-ins and thefts. The site is described as a center point for crime and public disorder, and the residents have to call daily for removal of garbage, needles, harm reduction supplies, and human feces. Finally, our last request is a pause in new services until we have some equity in the different communities. We're truly sorry that the provincial government has put so much on municipalities. I think it's a lot. And we're so grateful to the councillors who passed bylaws to protect our public areas before the province even did. We support you. We want to help you. This is a difficult topic. And like Mike said, some of us have received threats, targeted by anger. We've been publicly targeted, hatred meant to shame us and undermine our businesses. I don't particularly want to be here on a Tuesday night talking about this. I really don't. But I feel compelled like Mike because we went through 2 years of hell. There was no peace for us. It was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of chaos in our neighborhood. And I don't want another resident in this town to go through what we went through. So if we can get some standards going, if we can set some expectations, if we can put up some guardrails to ensure a more safe community, we would love to help with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you to both Mike and to Carrie for coming here and give us an update on your activities. And yeah, been great. So, councillors, do you have any questions? Okay, Councillor Woodward, then Councillor Lockenberg.
Thank you, through the chair.
Yes.
I guess I'm just wondering, you know, there was a lot of work done in the last 6 months by many different agencies. I'm wondering how you're feeling now. I mean, you know, obviously it's never, I don't know where the bar is, like it can't be perfect, but, and there were these incidents that you talked about, but I'm just wondering your feelings of the general situation now.
I feel like our neighborhood is much more secure. That being said, I think that my sense is that it's been dispersed to the rest of Nelson. And I think that, you know, I know people up in Houston Street that are now installing security cameras because they're dealing with incidents as well. I don't know if the police statistics will reflect. I mean, I think the number of violent crimes went up.
Yeah, so in 2022, violent crime in Nelson went up 37.7%, and our neighbor Castlegar saw a decrease in violent crime of 18.2%.
And I'm really cautious with statistics because I use statistics and I teach courses on how to use statistics properly, but I think that what I heard from police is that there were a number of catch and releases. They were frustrated with Crown Counsel for not pressing charges in some cases, and I think that, you know, it's a very complex situation. I think that all the first responders are overburdened with all the stuff that they have to do, and I think that from what I've heard, there's a collective sense of burnout for a lot of this issue. I don't know. I'm curious to hear your sense of how things are, and maybe with a number of people now pulled out of the community, sort of a criminal element, maybe things will change. But there was a critical mass of people that it seemed that the clubhouse became the hub for a lot of criminality.
But I think we're missing those guardrails still. You know, the clubhouse was a separate issue. It wasn't a prevention site. It was just an abandoned property, right? But I think with our OPS, with those sites, we have no expectations around behavior. We have no rules around where they should and shouldn't be. And there are places where an overdose prevention site is not suitable. So we need to lay some of these things out so that, you know, so that when it opens, people have an expectation here, and that they know that they will be heard if that expectation isn't met. Right now, we do not have that. So people are actually terrified. People have been calling us and emailing us. Do you know where the site is going to be? Where's the safe inhalation site? They're terrified of it, and I don't blame them, because what are they going to expect? Well, they can expect a rise in crime. They're going to have to put up cameras. Like, we can do better than that. So yeah, I think there's lots to do.
Thank you.
Councillor Hockenberg, then Councillor Page.
Thank you for that presentation. It clarifies, I think, things for me that I've been hearing over the last few years, and it starts to point towards the actions we can continue to take in our community to move forward in a compassionate but a compassionate way for all members of our community, as opposed to a tendency to focus on those who are the most vulnerable, which I think does tend to create consequences for the rest of the community that weren't intended but are inevitable if you continue to focus just on one thing and not try to approach things more holistically. And so I appreciate this, and I appreciate the partnership that you guys are proposing to bring going forward. So my question is a couple. You talk about the guardrails, and you presented some of those. I just need to refresh and maybe itemize those in my own mind a little bit better. So the first, you'd like to participate in citing the OPS, the safe inhalation site.
Well, community consultation.
A community consultation. So that's one thing. We're talking about.
And Rick,
maybe you can just give me a couple so that it's more.
And on top of that community consultation, I think the Nelson I knew is fundamentally changed in the last 2 or 3 years. I think we need community conversations on what is happening to get a better understanding. Pulling all the players in from all the different agencies, like Sean Zakowski, Constable Zakowski, knows a lot of what's going on. The street outreach team, anchors. There's a number of different agencies that have different perspectives, and I think that we don't have a full understanding of the picture. And I think strategically, I know it's not necessarily in the purview of the City of Nelson to do it, but I don't think anyone else will demonstrate the leadership. So there's an opportunity here to show leadership on this potentially.
Yeah, okay, so that's clear. So that's a great starting point. We want to start with dialogue. That's always a good thing, and public consultation is a good place. But I even think more broader neighborhood and community forum or fora would, and I think you are starting that and could be a continual ongoing partner in that neighborhoods level dialogues. I think that would be really great. And then beyond that, and when I'm thinking about what we might be able to start to put into motion from a policy perspective here in terms of updating the bylaws, as you suggested, there was something there, a good neighbor bylaw, I think.
A good neighbor policy,
a good neighbor policy.
With some teeth.
With some teeth, yep. So these, I think, are all really good ideas and things we should be looking at. What I found to be particularly effective in moving things forward is if you do take an active role in thinking these things through, as opposed to saying this is what you should do and then leave it here. Given all the other things we're doing, it tends to get listed or cited into our priorities, but pretty low.
Yeah.
And you could really bring that up higher by doing some of the legwork for us, and I think you've been doing that, and this is an example of that. But I would love to see what a good neighbor policy, good neighbor bylaw with teeth would look like, referencing other communities where it's worked.
Yeah, we can absolutely draft one.
Yeah.
Great.
So I think I want to thank you again. I think this is really important.
The two guys from Sudbury can do it.
Councillor Page.
Thank you. So thanks for your presentation today. I know you guys have been actively having meetings and discussing with the community and generating this work. It's critically important. Inside of that conversation of dialogue, one of the features of the issue we saw, especially this year, was, and you touched on it, this expression from both sides of an assertion of rights and the need for people to receive the care that they need. We just heard from the mobile response team earlier today from a workshop where the question was raised of how Nelson pegs across what the rest of the province and country has seen. We've heard from Interior Health in the past on the absolute necessity of providing medical care inside of this particular crisis. And inside of the dialogue, I'm wondering how we bridge, and Neighbourhood Network bridges the dialogue between the people affected by the individuals that are bringing that criminality component and the people who are the unhoused existing in the neighborhood, because it's one of the pieces I guess I'm just not seeing expressed within the presentation here today, is how are their voices also being reflected. I know that's a role that the city tries to also facilitate. Me and my colleagues have been down to the work that Selkirk is doing around the homelessness project and the dialogue sessions there. We certainly experienced quite a lot of dialogue sessions with the unhoused population across the region, and I'm just wondering how we also resonate that conversation inside of a group like Neighbourhood Network, so it's inclusive.
That's it.
And
Sorry,
stepped
Keith,
up
go.
from you. No, I'm done my ramble.
Yeah, no, I think that's the $64,000 question. And I think it was too hot in the spring. We wanted to meet with anchors, we wanted to meet with Redone, we wanted to talk to different people, and we were told we couldn't.
Right.
And we've met with Mayor Morrison, we've met with CAO Cormac, we've met with the police chief, the assistant chief, we've met with the fire chief, we've met with Nelson Cares, we've recently met with anchors, and we've met with the fentanyl task force. We're trying to meet with people to get a better understanding, and I'm not sure, I'm more akin to work with the organizations versus the street population. There are a number of incidents where I've approached someone that's been lying on the ground and I've had a reaction that is not, it's not safe. I don't feel like I'm the person that has the expertise. I took a nonviolent peacekeeping course in the summer, and my partner Kirsten wanted to start some sort of a group, but we were told that things were too hot at this time, in terms of it wouldn't be seen well, or would be seen as having some sort of more of a policing component, and that's not where we're at. I think our job is to disseminate information amongst the public and to ensure that we're kind of a conduit to council and some of the other things that we said.
I think we can't be all those things.
I can answer one question.
Oh, okay.
We did have a very successful, I do spend most of my time with people on the streets.
Yeah.
In Cranbrook, we had a very successful day where Carolyn, who was one of the people that lives on the hill, she is now 3 weeks into rehab. What happened was N2 went to Cranbrook, and I went down to the hill to bring people up to say that they could speak to their MLA, to their city council, and waited outside for an hour for her to get ready. And she had special clothes that she had kept when she gets to see her children, which she was forbidden to see. Long story short of it, Carolyn is now 3 weeks into her rehab, and we're very proud of her. So there is these opportunities where N2 comes into the different communities, and we make sure that we go down into where they are and in their habitat. And that's my goal as the chair of this group, is to make sure that we are hearing the voices of everyone. But we do have a lane that we stay in, and but part of that is that growing up in a situation that I did, I try and make sure that they have the voice as well, and I try and bring that to the table as much as I can.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Payne.
I am not an economist, but I'm looking at your numbers and I have some questions about them.
Oh, Michael answered those.
You're comparing Nelson to 3 large metropolitan areas, and I think if we did an accurate comparison, we would include, we're doing the Greater Nelson. So I think we need to sort of look at Greater Nelson to do, I don't know if Councillor Page is going to jump on this backwards, but I think it would be definitely fairer to compare.
You're talking about the homeless
Yeah,
population,
your
not the
homeless,
crime rates,
your
because we were
statistic there
comparing
on the
Well,
Castle.
population.
Burnaby,
So Surrey,
Coquitlam.
Greater Victoria, and Vancouver, and then Nelson. I think it's an interesting
Well,
juxtaposition.
Nelson does have the second highest in the interior. Quesnel has the highest. The point-in-time counts are extremely difficult they're underreported by a factor of 5 to 6 times.
Pretty
So,
familiar with them.
yeah, 8% of the population has a lived experience being homeless at some point in time. So it's a challenging number. All I'm saying is that we've got big city problems here, and we're not a big city community in terms of what we can offer. We don't have the Redfish Center that Coquitlam has, where if people want to get into detox, they can. And unfortunately, I think Councillor Morrison has said this, or sorry, Mayor Morrison, sorry, going back a few years there, has said that the provincial government really hasn't provided those other pillars of support. And as Wab Kinew, the new Premier of Manitoba said, a former addict, he said, we need to have all pathways to recovery. And I don't think we're offering them in BC yet, and we certainly don't have them in interior communities.
I hear you, and I understand that. But if I were to look at these numbers in any legitimate way, I'd need to compare us to another town comparable to Nelson. Because coming back from UBCM, we had the experience of talking to those councils and those mayors, they're experiencing the same things that we are. So that's what I see would be a legitimate comparison. The other question that I had for you is, so you and Tanya have been out looking for safe inhalation sites. I do find it really interesting that we've placed such a high priority on this, and within our community, we can't find one place. Do you have criteria that you feel are?
The Vice President of IH asked us to identify sites, and so we drove around and we said we don't want to move it to another neighborhood that doesn't, like where we don't want to drop it in another neighborhood. And we offered them some places in the downtown core and in the Railtown district, and I think we.
17, and we also said that public consultation is mandatory in those sites wherever it's put.
Yeah.
So you have identified sites, I guess that's my question.
Well, we've passed
So
them
you
on
have
to
identified sites.
we've passed them on to
City
Interior Health.
and to Interior, and the city knows of some, but.
Perfect. That's great news. Thank you very much.
We remember we put pause on until the other communities will do their part as well.
I'm just asking a simple question. So you've identified sites, that information has been passed along.
Yep.
That's great news for me. I think it is a huge priority. I think we all recognize that saving lives is a pretty significant part of the equation when we sit around this table and talk about all the residents in our community. That's a big one. And when I looked up the definition of neighbor, it said people living near or next door to us. So really, the people in the cubbies, the people at Government Road, those are also our neighbors from my perspective. So I'm glad that we're thinking about ways to keep everyone safe. I do want to just clarify, so are there objections to the current OPS sites? I wasn't sure from your... From your perspective, you were saying you wanted to identify, similar to the cannabis, if like the current sites, are they in what you would consider appropriate locations, or is there some issue with those as well?
Well, we're talking about anything new that comes in.
Okay, just new. So current is work.
We don't have any objection to that.
Great.
To those two sites that exist.
Yeah, I just had highlighted that safe location, so I just wanted to check it.
Yeah, although I would say we don't speak for everyone in our group.
Not
If you understand, I
Neither do we. We
understand
do
what
our
you're
best.
saying, but there's so many people, and so there might be some people who do. So I don't know if I can make that a blanket statement, like I'm speaking for 400 and something people. I haven't asked them. So, sorry, just a little caveat there.
That's okay. Yeah. And just one follow-up with you. Sure. I'm just interested in, I think we are also interested in cooling things down so we can have that dialogue. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions around that, how we can have those conversations with people with lived experience similar to what Tanya's experiencing in Cranbrook? Is that something?
I think we'd
It's
be open
certainly
to
getting
being
cool outside.
Yeah, I think we'd be open to any meeting. I mean, I've made 3 presentations to FCM. I've presented in hot areas. I facilitated is Jack Harrison still here? A conversation at Learning and Retirement yesterday last week about Gaza and Israel. And I was asked to step into it. I have no problem stepping into any dialogue or any conversation with people that are reasonable. So if I would suggest that another party, like this is where I'm thinking that the City of Nelson or Interior Health should take the leadership and propose a forum or a series of forums getting all the players in the room. I think that would be a great move forward.
Valuable.
There is a fear around speaking out about this. And I think it's really important that we understand that. I lived in my community in chaos for a year, and I think I called the police twice. I was so fearful. What will people think of me? And so I think with N2 we've provided a place for people to speak out. And there's businesses in this town who are afraid that they will lose business over this issue. And so I just think that's something I don't want people to forget. They need to be consulted in a really safe way.
Councillor Tate.
Thanks for your presentation. Thanks for all of your dedication to this topic. I know it's something that we talk about here a lot. I noticed on the slide that you'd like to see supportive housing and complex care beds, as we would all like to see more housing of any kind, but in particular this type. And I also noticed from your mission that there's quite a lot of overlap with Together Nelson and the Nelson Committee on Homelessness and maybe a little bit Neighbors United and all of these other core groups that you're reaching out to. And because complex care and supportive housing, it tends to be a lot more provincial.
Yes.
I would encourage you to keep reaching out to those groups so that we can have a collective voice. Like we can't open a hot dog stand without Interior Health's permission, period. Right? So we certainly can't open a complex care facility.
That being said, Councillor Tate, thank you for that. Cicada Place, when it opened 20 years ago, was revolutionary.
Yes.
Nobody had ever done anything like it. People at the provincial level thought that it wouldn't work because a number of people with high needs in one location, it was just a recipe for disaster. And I think it's proven through good leadership and through having guardrails and having sort of strict policies, but a compassionate tone, that it's really worked. It's served the community for 20 years. And I think we wanted to put that in only because I think if you just sort of say this is a housing issue, we need to build more housing, it's not going to work. We need housing that's innovative, that's got wraparound services, other supports, or
Health supports, which...
Well, I mean, we've got a number of people in our neighborhood that are setting fires pretty regularly. Like we've had a couple businesses where fires have been set. That's a scary situation in the summer. I'm more fearful of a fire coming from within the city during our dry period than a forest fire coming in down the road or down the mountain. We've got more of a chance of that. Mm-hmm. Right now, we don't have any way to kind of house people that have very complex needs.
Yeah, so there's some partnerships available there because, as we all know, when we're looking into housing, we sometimes have avenues to get there, but building something takes a long time, and getting the care in place is a health authority piece of the puzzle. And because there's quite a lot of overlap with these other groups that have been working hard for a long time, I just encourage us to try to have a collective voice. And maybe the dialogue is the first place to start. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening. And yeah. And hopefully maybe we'll have you back again in 6 months or a year and have another update and continue your work. And yeah.
I'm just really disappointed. I thought the Stanley Cup was bigger than that.
It's not. No, that's how big
camera
it is.
Really? It's the camera.
It's all CGI. It's all optics, yes. But we're very,
Thank you for
very
hearing
grateful
us
to have it. Thank you.
And appreciate your questions and your interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda here is, when I find it,
Closing to the public?
is
Yeah, we're closing, yeah.
that I need a resolution to close the meeting to the public. It is the opinion of the council that the public interest requires persons other than members of council and staff and any approved audiences be excluded from this meeting, and the meeting of council continue under section 91K for matters regarding the negotiation and related discussions respecting the proposed provisions of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages. Moved by Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor? Okay, and that carries, and we'll take 5 minutes, 5 minutes only.
5 minutes only, she said.